Well, it's one for the money, two for the show, three to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoe.
Camera project. Jimmy, is that why the chief has joined us?
Correct.
Okay, Chief, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well. Yourself?
Good. Everything's good.
Good.
Good. Do you want to tell us a little about the license plate reader camera project?
Yes, so I had submitted this proposal to you back in March. It's basically what happened was back in 2020, actually 2019, I asked for money in the 2020 capital budget for ALPRs. So it's an automatic license plate reader. What it is it's a camera, and it's also a device that reads license plates. We have these things here right now strewn across the county. They're on police cars. They're in other locations. We don't have any Tenafly at this time. We did have one on the police car, but we no longer have it. That one had become a non-repairable. So I put in for the end of 19 for the 2020 budget, and the town actually approved $40,000 for the cameras back then. I was going to start with a few and then build out the project from there. The cameras are $6,200 a piece. You don't have the option of shopping around for a better price. They are proprietary. There's only one specific device that is approved by the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. It's flash coded with encryption programming, so obviously you can't use any others. So since then, and with the rise in some burglaries, and also too with the car burglaries, and with this technology obviously increasing, something in popularity all over the place, I sought to increase it, the amount of cameras we were going to get. Originally, we were going to look to do a couple of intersections in town where some other towns have. The problem with that is that if we're looking to capture criminals that are driving through town after they committed a burglary or stolen a car, unless they drove through that particular intersection, and we have many in town, we're not going to get them. So what other towns have done, similar to what the county has done, is my proposal is to put 2 cameras on every major entrance and exit to town, basically the ring around Tenafly. And the reason it's 2 cameras is that, although I like to do one camera is for vehicles entering, and it gets the front of the vehicle, and I guess a little snapshot of who's driving it. And then the other camera is for the other lane, if the vehicle is leaving, and you get the back of the vehicle. And obviously, some states only require 1 plate. So obviously, it's highly recommended they get 2 cameras, and that's at the recommendation of the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. So that said, so between the $40,000 already, between the $40,000 that was earmarked or approved in 2020, I had submitted a proposal that I wanted to buy another roughly $60,000 to add to the project to increase the amount of cameras for more of these locations, because now we're getting away from the intersections and going to the major entrances to town. There's about 16 in total. I wanted to do 12 initially, and the $60,000 I want to add to it would be actually coming out of the forfeiture funds. So the forfeiture funds basically are funds that the department has accumulated over the years as a result of money from crimes or property that the defendant actually had to forfeit because obviously they were found guilty of a crime, and the department was able to keep that. Every department has a certain amount of forfeiture funds. They're held by the county prosecutor's office, and police departments can make requests for these funds as long as they're used for criminal justice purposes. So the $60,000 extra that I want to add to the $40,000 already approved by the town would come at no cost to the borough. This would be money that's already basically in another account. And that would be to, I guess, add additional cameras to these locations. There are some costs to the borough, and I mentioned that in the proposal, and they would be basically, I think it's $17 per location for an unmetered electricity from public service. So obviously you have to have power going through the cameras, so $17 per location. And then right now, if we did it without this certain mesh network that the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office is trying to build out, we would have a $40 cost per location for the wireless communication. The county prosecutor's office is looking to do this all over the county, and they're probably going to actually come up with a no-cost communication device. So they're working toward that. And they're also trying to get on our cell towers in town. They're also trying to get on the roof of the hospital, not just for the purpose of Tenafly, but for basically everyone in this area, because they're trying to do the entire county. And that would probably reach out to other towns in the valley, like Cresskill and Closter and other towns nearby. So there are some nominal monthly costs, but the other costs, again, $40,000 already approved by the borough. I want to go to $60,000 from the forfeiture funds, which would be no cost to the borough, and there would be some monthly costs. So that's what I proposed to the borough, and that would cover. I'm sorry, that would cover 8 locations. I've come up with basically 13 locations that would basically be the major entrances and exits to town. That's Angle Street, Dean Drive, Knickerbocker Road, East Clinton Avenue. Out of the 13, the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office is going to do 1, which is East Clinton 9W. And I'm looking to do 8, which leaves 4 that I'd like to do at a future date. So that's basically what I proposed. I know we have a lot of people in town that are very in favor of this. Right now, when people drive out of town, you drive to other towns, you're on camera, you're going past these plate readers to begin with. You go over the George Washington Bridge, you go down the Turnpike, you're going past these plate readers on a regular basis. I'm just looking to bring this locally to our town. So when we get a crime, and almost everyone, a very large number of people have a Ring doorbell or they have a home surveillance camera. We can go to that camera and say, oh, it's this whatever silver Audi at so-and-so time. And if we can't get the plate from that, then we go and we look at all of our entrances and exits, and we're probably going to see that car driving past one of the plate readers and get a license plate and possibly an image of the person. It will be very, very helpful for our operation. It's paying dividends in other locations now, and this is really where the future is going. I know some people have concerns that this is Big Brother, something, watching out, but I can assure you this is going to be for law enforcement purposes only. The only people that will have access to it is the prosecutor's office and police departments, and hopefully we never have to use it. But if something really bad happens in town, we can go to the eye and we can take a look, and it's going to give us very invaluable intelligence.
Thank you for that, Chief. Thank you. Any council members have questions on this?
Yeah, I
No
have
more.
a quick
Go
question
ahead,
for
Julie.
you. Yeah, Chief, do you just have any knowledge how long the images are stored for? Would you by any chance know that?
That's a great question. I don't. Uh, so the plate reading is probably stored forever because that's a very small file. But the images, usually they're on, I want to say the county is going to be holding them 90 days, but I will get back to you. You stumped me on that one. I have to get that answer for you.
I tend to do that. Thank you.
Other questions from council members?
Yes.
Go ahead, Vanu.
Let Lauren go. I think her hand was up first.
Go ahead, Lauren.
And Mayor Jeff's hand is up as well.
Okay.
Chief, thank you so much. Thank you for jumping on this. As you know, in this past year, there have been many concerned residents, and I think this will help put minds at ease that we will be able to not only find the people, that are attempting these crimes, but deter them. And knowing that there's cameras here will, I think, be a huge deterrent. And I just want to remind the public, for those listening out there, this information is only given to our police department and the prosecutor's office, and it's admissible in court. So if something happens here, you can press charges using this evidence. It's great. It's already admissible in a court of law, which is huge. So Chief, thank you. I'm fully in support of this, and I appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Vanu, then Jeff, please.
Okay. Chief, just a couple of questions. Is this being mandated in any way by the county, or is this entirely, meaning, are they recommending it? Are they mandating it in any way? Are they,
They,
or is this purely discretionary on our part?
it's discretionary. They're not mandating it. They're recommending it.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. They are building they're building this in the county. They're trying to get as many in the county as possible because it's going to be on their system. And obviously, the more cameras there are, obviously, the more helpful the system will be.
Right. So does that meaning? Yes. They're recommending it. If we don't have the cameras up, let's say Englewood does, and the next town does, will be a gap in that, but they would still have that information. For example, leaving Englewood or leaving Dumont or leaving, an adjacent town.
So I know I think the closest camera to us was in Cresskill, but it's not functioning right now. A lot of these towns do not have them, and again, when the towns put them up, they may be looking to do the intersections like I guess it was originally. So I don't know what those other towns are planning to do. I don't believe any of those towns have them on their borders right now. I believe and I think another one's on 9W Angler Cliffs. So, but it's a good point. And if towns were looking to do something like that, could they share some of the costs? Maybe, but I think I don't know. I'm not aware of any towns that actually have on the borders. I know some towns have them in the interiors.
Or the question is, I guess, a lot of the towns you said don't have them at all. Are they concerned in any way about privacy rights or, those sort of issues versus security?
The police department said the police department would like them is obviously a cost issue. So, and obviously it was a cost initially. And that's kind of why when I went to you folks earlier, I only asked for $40,000. When I realized the value of these, that's why I'm looking to spend so much in forfeiture funds. I don't want to put that burden on you. I want to go get those and use those for for the appropriate purposes.
Right, I appreciate that. Will there be signs put up, saying that that there are these cameras in effect, or license plate readers? I mean, is that something that normally would be done?
Something not that I'm aware of, but I do know that some folks in town, something in a particular region in town that were concerned about obviously some of the increasing car thefts in their area. They wanted to put signs on their streets. That has a value that is a deterrent. However, some residents may not want that, but I think there could be a benefit if we had them on some of these major approaches to town that we have that. Something. I mean, you can't measure deterrence, but if we're deterring it, something and it's not happening, that's a good thing. So I think there is a place for some cameras. Yes, Councilman. Madam.
Thank you.
Jeff, please. You're on mute, Jeff. Jeff, you're on mute.
Yep, I realize. Thank you. Won't have to deal with that, hopefully, many more meetings. Thank you, Chief. This is awesome. I think it is something that will help you guys with law enforcement. And actually, Councilman Menon picked up on the point I was going to raise, is when other towns do this, maybe it's worth coordinating the borders so we don't have, let's say, Bergenfield coming in and out and Tenafly 10 feet away coming in and out. So it would be a nice thing to make sure we do have some coordination going forward on that, just from a cost point of view even. So I think it's a great idea. And I wouldn't actually go very far in advertising where these are located. I'd actually downplay that because there are too many side streets that you can take to go different routes, and I wouldn't want people to figure that out.
It's also a good point. So yes, Lauren.
So
Any other?
actually,
Go ahead, Lauren.
yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead.
Actually, Jeff brings up an excellent point on the borders. Chief, I'm not sure if you're in contact with any of the surrounding police chiefs, but, a cost sharing initiative would be, something interesting to explore, at least for the couple on the borders.
So initially, when I was first getting education in these systems, I was on the impression that like 1 or 2 cameras at an intersection, like on a 45-degree angle, get the entire intersection. I was sadly mistaken. They have a zone of influence. It's a little more narrow. It's not a fisheye, so to speak, and it has to be looking in a certain direction to get the plates. So the problem that we have is that, let's just say, for instance, Ivy Lane and Tenafly Road, right? So one side of the intersection is Anglewood, one side of the road intersection is Tenafly. If a car was driving down Ivy and decided to go south in Tenafly Road into Anglewood, our cameras wouldn't see it. So our cameras are going to be obviously in Tenafly Road, just a little north of Ivy. So if they've come into Tenafly or left Tenafly, then we're going to capture them. So there is some technological issues that come into play. I totally agree with what both of you are saying. Actually, all three of you are saying. It would be nice if maybe someday the technology will be there. Right now, it's not. But I will definitely be keep my eyes and ears up for that.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Okay, any other questions from any other council members? Okay. Chief, is there anything else? So you have the financial resources you need. Is there anything else you need from the council? It sounds like
Yes. So what I'm going to need is that. So whenever I make a request for forfeiture funds over, I think it's over $6,000 or so, I have to get obviously the approval of the borough administrator has to sign off on it. But the fact that these are going on to utility poles that are within the town's control, I would like your approval, the council's approval, so I can write the request letter for the funds. And then that'll start that process. It takes a little bit of time. And again, we're still building this out because again, do we need to communicate? Do we not need to communicate? Do we going to go to satellite towers? But it'll help me get the ball rolling. But what I want to do, I want to make that initial request for the money. But I just would like something, your approval, how we want to give it, and then the borough administrator then is free to sign my paperwork and then I can submit it.
okay. So Omar, it sounds like we need a consensus from the council. Is there anyone who is against this? So it sounds like everyone's in favor of it. Is that accurate? Do we need to take a vote or we're good? It looks like, Chief.
I think we're good, Mayor.
We're good.
Yeah, I think we're good, Chief. You've got your consensus.
Outstanding.
So, full speed ahead, and thank you for the presentation and your time.
Outstanding. And then Jimmy, I will prepare the paperwork and I'll meet with you and sign off on it. We'll get it submitted.
Before you go, Chief, on
Yes.
the consent agenda, is there anything that we need to know about this access system?
The door access system?
Yeah. Is there anything we need to
No.
know?
So what that is, our building is about what? Our building is about 10 years old, and we have a door access system. Basically, it's fobs and it's key swipes, and it basically the program is done. So you folks in the technological world, you're something you know all about these things are great while they last. They don't last so long. So we need a major upgrade, and we have to go to a new vendor because the old vendor doesn't really want to service it anymore. They're too far away. So that is the cost to get the software upgrade by the new vendor who is actually local. I think they're in Carlstadt, and it's nothing more than that. It's our access, but it's a security feature also too. One of the components of that as a man trap. What a man trap is that in our processing area, you can't have two doors open at the same time, so we can't prison run out on you, or shouldn't. So it's within that vein.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks again, Chief. Appreciate your time.
And then just one last thing, our black bear issue. Anyone hear anything about black bears?
Yes,
I heard about it too. I
just
wrote to the mayor.
I just wanted to let you know that we have reports that it was seen leaving town going south into Anglewood Cliffs. So I told the captain who called me today, I said, "We'll go up there and tell him to keep going south." So just so you're aware, we were getting a lot of calls on it, and there was a good conversation about do we do code red, do we not do code red, and I was very close to it. And I'm not saying that may not happen in the future, but it's it's sometimes no matter how well you write that message or speak it, you could have a tendency to really set off further alarm. So that was kind of what was at stake there. And so, but the fishing game, folks, they always tell us they're harmless. They'll kind of move off, let them be, and hopefully it's gone out of town and it's not coming back.
Okay, thank
right.
you, Chief.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Good night.
All right, next item on the agenda is tree removal and protection. Jimmy, what's going on?
I believe this is I believe council members O'Connor and Dayton and Menon were kind of all individually. I'm not sure they're all working on it with Mike separately and together. So I think one of them should probably take over and introduce this.
Okay, council members, who wants to take this first?
Maybe Councilman Menon could talk about the work he and I have been doing for a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, a few months ago, Councilwoman Dr. O'Connor and I, in consultation with DP Director Mike, started a discussion on updating the Tenafly Tree Code ordinance, or the tree removal and protection regulations, as it's called. So shown in the document that you received were a number of changes recommended by Mike in our discussion with him. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to look through the ordinance and understand the changes that are being recommended. But if I'm not mistaken, Mike is available on the call if anybody on the governing body has questions. And of course, Councilwoman Dr. O'Connor and I are available as well.
And if I could, I just want to add to Councilman Menon's point. We were concerned about, of course, a few key things is that people were following the procedures in place when they want to do a hardship appeal. So that was kind of what made us get attention to the tree code, but also the mitigation of when trees are cut down, what replaces them. That was something that interested us. So if I could just bring your attention to, there's a chart where it talks about specifically, well, it's so weird to tell about these pages, 26 with a colon and an 8 next to it. It's a chart you'll see about, this was a change regarding the number of trees removed versus the required mitigation. And if you'll notice on that page that the proposal is for so the part A is if you're a homeowner, I'm sorry, yeah, number 1, the top chart is if you're a homeowner. The number 2 chart is if it's a developer. So you'll see what we swapped out. One of the things is that previously they said for every 1 tree removed, no, putting 1 tree rather for every 3 trees removed, minor trees. We wanted to swap that out for a 1-to-1, that if you remove 1, you put in 1. And then also those changes as well for developers in the second chart. Those were a couple things I wanted to bring your attention to. As I say, a lot of the other things would come from Mike Cassidy with some of the, he uses quite a lot of time on this. So I just, he's here to answer questions as well. So that's basically our, the work. And so happy to discuss it with our fellow council people.
I just, Councilwoman O'Connor, I'm going to interrupt just for a second. Could I ask, please, if you're not speaking, could you be sure to mute yourself as a courtesy to everyone? Thank you. Go ahead, Councilwoman O'Connor. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was done. I know that that Councilwoman Dayton had also concerns about tree codes, so I'll let her take it away.
Councilwoman Dayton, go ahead.
Oh, Julie, thank you so much. So some of these changes I So let me just understand this. Julie, this is your handwriting throughout these notes here? Okay.
Yes.
So I love a lot of these. These are great. So thank you for all that work. I'd like to go back to that chart. My concern is that we have developers that are clear cutting the properties. And rather than mitigate, they're just leaving the money in the escrow. So what I would like to do is require a percentage of mitigation. So I'm not sure which trees it has to be, they can choose, but I want to say, you know, you must mitigate 25% back, or you must mitigate 40% back, whatever number our council feels is responsible. But to mitigate 0 back, or to mitigate 1 or 2 back, you know, under 10%, if you're clear cutting a property, is insufficient no matter what. It defeats the purpose of this ordinance.
I tend to agree, but I'd like actually, our hands get a little tied the way that Mike explained it to me, because Mike, why don't you talk to that issue? Because I couldn't agree more. But then when they put a very a large house on that property and it changes the land, I think you've talked to Councilman Menon and I about how those challenges of making them put trees back where they were, where there's no land there anymore, and then what the state says. Do you mind talking to that a little bit, Mike?
Mike, before you jump in, can
Yeah,
you also talk about stormwater management here? Because that's clearly something that we need to focus on as a community. So go ahead.
right off stormwater management, that starts and ends before it even gets to me. That's mainly the engineering, and the building official are gonna determine whether or not, you know, these things are meeting the proper drainage issues. And that falls into how we're taking trees down also. Resident with a 1 acre property is forced to put in 3,000 gallon pits in his property. He's got to take trees down to make room to dig the hole to bury the pit. So it's built to suit. It's basically how I explained it to the other council members is, you know, they take a piece of property and they draw it out so that they are just building on every inch of it. If it's not a building or an amenity, it's a substructure or a utility line or a walkway. And, you know, once these things come to me past zoning, there's nothing, you know, I can't stop them. You know, it's already been approved, and if their plans show me that they are going to actually be building something and it's going to cause a harm to the tree or a safety issue later on, I have to let them remove it. So that's, you know, kind of how you get to that point.
So the planning before it gets to you, the fact that, you know, just to clarify what you said, the fact that they really use their entire property is where your hands get tied, right? When it comes to
Exactly. Yeah. I can't stop them if the plan shows that there's infrastructure to be put in and the tree needs to be removed in order to either insert that infrastructure or to facilitate its, you know, a building or whatever. So
Can I ask a different question? And maybe this is for Jeff and Mayor. And thank you, Mike. If we required a certain percentage of mitigation back, would the zoning and the planning boards adhere to that in approving plans for development? How does that
Well,
work?
so right, there's zoning requirement. No property. So let's talk about residential houses for a second and forget
Yeah.
about commercial properties. On a residential lot, there's a maximum percentage that you can cover the lot with improvements, including
Right, so impervious coverage.
right, you know,
Impervious.
buildings, there's
Yeah.
floor area ratios, there's all kinds of calculations. And within the footprint of a building, you are able to take down trees without any mitigation. And so if we want to talk about changing those rules, those are all zoning questions. Mike is right. Those aren't DPW tree mitigation questions. Those are much bigger questions to address. And in terms of if we want to require more mitigation, you know, Wendy will have to step in here as to whether that's the planning board and master plan issue, or is that strictly a borough council ordinance issue, Wendy?
On the tree mitigation part, that is coming through this ordinance. As far as the allowances for the takedown part and the floor area ratios, and to that extent, you're right, Mr. Mayor, that would be the planning board side of things, which still can be codified in an ordinance, either starting from the planning board, coming up to the council with recommendations, or the recommendations from the council to review by planning board and then coming back to the council for adoption. So
Wendy, so I'm sorry I just need to follow up to understand this. Let's say we pass Julie's changes here, or let's say we even go stronger and require a certain percentage of mitigation. So we now pass this at the council table. Now we have a planning board or a zoning board who have a developer, and they're going to say, well, there's no way we can replant 30% or 20% or whatever, one tree for every one tree, whatever we put. Which ordinance is going to supersede?
well, let me ask a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Are you envisioning that your ordinance at the council level here for the tree mitigation would not allow for forfeiture completely?
Correct.
So that's another problem because
How does the state handle that?
well, no, I'm thinking from the planning board perspective, they're looking at zoning uses, area ratios on that side, on the buildable. They're not looking at what was there prior, so to speak, unless it's a pre-existing that was destroyed by fire. So anytime you get an approval from the planning board or even a zoning board, there should be some kind of catch-all language in the resolution that, aside from what is set forth specifically in their resolution of approval, that they'll abide by all other ordinances. Exactly. So it's not necessarily going to be the planning board who's going to be the police on this, that onus would fall probably more to DPW and your building inspectors on when the building inspectors go in to check compliance to close out permits.
Yeah, just to interject there, having been on and off the planning board for about 13 or 14 years now, I could say that the planning board does, once they approve plans, that then gets, if the resolutions are passed, et cetera, that gets turned over to the applicant and then the building department. The planning
Right.
board does not get involved in any sort of enforcement or follow-up to once their approval is done, unless someone's coming back to the planning board to change their application.
Right.
So I am thinking this is a little bit more zoning, and so maybe Councilman Menon wants to discuss. So basically, if we do this and someone zones to allow a deck, a patio, something, and now they have to take down these trees without any area to mitigate. I mean, really, actually, it's really a Wendy question again. I'm sorry, Councilman Menon. I'm going to bump it to Wendy. How does that work, Wendy?
It's still two separate actions. One is to allow the construction to proceed. Then you have to have an enforcement side on the other end, which would still be between your DPW looking for the bond that was placed and whatnot, whether or not to recommend release of the monies or whether it's forfeiture. And then if there's plans to spec, then it's on the building code side. They're going to go back and before they close permits, see that things match what the spec plans and the site plan approval showed. Not to say that people are dishonest or honest, but somebody could show and mark where the trees are going to be planted on their site plan that gets approved. And then, lo and behold, without somebody going out there for enforcement, you're not necessarily going to see those trees in those locations.
If I could also say about this issue about bonding, just for everyone's edification. So Mike had, if you look at 26:10, I guess it'd be page 10, with the performance bonds, we revised the bond amount from 250 to 300 and from 125 to 175. The reason we were suggested by Mike not to go too increased with that fee is because the ultimate goal, right, Mike, is to get people not to forfeit their bond, but to in fact replace the trees on their property, right?
That's correct. But
Well,
at
again-
the same time, at the existing rates that we have, it's really not enough to cover the planting of a new tree.
So again, Wendy, is it legal to then require certain percentage to be mitigated without
So what I
forfeiture?
would suggest, again, you're getting into enforcement actions. What I would suggest otherwise, because you may come across a property that just doesn't have the ability to put it there. And, you know, the reason for the bonds and your tree funds is theoretically so that then you get another resident who maybe wants a shade tree planted within the front of their property. Now you have the money and now you have the location and DPW can plant it somewhere else. So the fees are somewhat to match what the cost of planting is, not only so that it becomes attractive for the homeowner to plant it themselves, but you also want to make it doable that if they don't plant it, you have the ability as a borough to plant it on borough property or somewhere else so that the net effect is almost like the Wetlands Act, no net loss. You want to make sure you still have the trees somewhere and appropriate size trees as well. That's why there should be a difference in price, which there is between the minor and the major trees. What I would suggest is, and I'm sure that Mike already did this when you look to see what the prices should be, is making sure that the cost of replanting plus some administrative cost for mobilization of your DPW to plant it somewhere else be reflected in what the bond price is per tree. And we may want to look into, and this is just coming to the top of my head, so I apologize for not having looked into it before, but perhaps if the concern is that there's raising of a lot of old growth trees with a small house to put up now, something that covers the complete FAR allowed, perhaps we can look into whether we could sustain a different pricing structure similar to, you know, if it's 1 to 5 trees, the cost for a major tree would be X, but from 5 to 15 trees, the cost would be Y. And perhaps there could be an incremental increase so that, again, it encourages people to put that 20% back just to get back down under that incremental increase.
But Wendy, to Lauren's point, though, I don't think she's really asking about it as an enforcement issue. Is there a different way to approach this whole idea? Are we allowed to say certain percentage has to stay, or you're saying you really can't because
You
of the way the
can.
property changes?
I mean, you can, but then you're still going to be faced with people that are going to have to apply for a waiver possibility.
And do they apply to us or zoning?
So there, you know, you'll still have to be ready for the circumstance where it may just not be possible.
Yeah, I don't, I'm just going to interject here for a second. I'm not sure how, if you have a piece of property, whatever it is, 100 by 100, that has X numbers of trees on it, and they're all in the center of the property, and if you can imagine a new building, a new house is going in that center of the property in the footprint, I don't know how you measure the trees as a percent of what you're doing, since you don't have to mitigate for the trees you're taking down in the footprint. I'm not sure how that, for practical purposes, would be used.
Mayor, can I answer? So,
Sure.
first of all, if you are you don't have to mitigate the trees you do in a footprint, but maybe if you have to mitigate a certain percentage, maybe your footprint will automatically be smaller or more in proportion with what's needed to maintain the rest of the property and the green space. And again, you know, these trees do absorb water, they do help with runoff, they do provide shade and animals shelter. So, you know, again, we want to encourage keeping some of these old trees. The idea so that that property doesn't clean cut itself. So in
Right,
terms of the
so
percentage, that I'm proposing if you take down 20 trees with or without the footprint, if you take down 20% trees, your mitigation requirement is 20% of the 20 trees. Total trees taken down.
I just one thing
Go ahead,
about the mitigation. I think we're actually talking not 20%, but a 1-to-1. I mean,
No, but I mean that I'm saying as a minimum, so that you can never just not mitigate back. At a minimum, you must, and then you talk about which trees need to get replaced at what level, at what cost. But the idea is that there's a minimum there, so you must replant. You can't just leave all the money in escrow.
so like as Wendy said before, this is immediately getting into zoning issues and less of tree ordinance issues, because now you're dealing with the property percentages of building, percentages of trees. It's a much more absolute calculation. So I don't know.
It's still mitigation. This is still mitigation. They can, you know,
Right.
zoning, they can pick whatever they want for the zoning board. I have no say on that. But
Right,
when
but
you
it,
count the trees that you take down, when you count the trees to take down, and I like Julie's idea of 1-to-1 and all of those changes and the additional pricing, the way Wendy did. But at no point should you be able to say, I don't have to mitigate.
So
That's
what
still a
if,
mitigation issue.
Council President, what if someone's only taking 1 tree or 2 trees down? How would you come up to the 20%?
Well,
A smaller
it's-
caliber?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I will
Well,
say that
maybe it starts like at 10 and up, or 10 trees and up, if we're talking, so we make it, you know, that rule only applies if you start cutting down more than 10 trees or 20 trees, something like that.
you know, I'm happy to kind of brainstorm a little bit between now and the next meeting if you all would like.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as you can see,
Yeah.
Councilman Menon and my goal was to definitely strengthen the tree code, you know? So that's why you see now a 1-to-1. There's also increase of penalties. We do have to be conscious, though, of the performance bond that Mike Cassidy says it costs less than is the cost of a new planting of a tree still, but we don't want to go so high that they don't replant it themselves. So that, and, you know, but no,
I'm
I
not
think
understanding
Councilman
that,
Mendon.
though. I'm sorry, Dr. O'Connor, can you, or maybe Mr. Cassidy, if you can
Yeah,
explain
Mike,
that?
you
If
want to
the
explain
bond
a
price is
performance
higher, that
bond?
should encourage someone to plant it to get their money back. I think that's the part I'm
Mike?
missing.
yeah, something doesn't seem right about that analysis. In other words, if a tree costs $100 to plant, and the bond is 200, they have a huge incentive to replant a tree because they get $100 back. But if the bond, if the bond is, what is it? What am I thinking, Wendy? If the
If the
bond is
bond were
less,
100 and the cost
right,
is 200, then you might as well forfeit because it'll be
right,
cheaper.
right. And then to Wendy's point before, if we don't have forfeitures going on, we don't have money in our tree fund to plant trees elsewhere. So it's something to think about. I'm not arguing either way right now, but it's something we have to think about because the behavior will be shaped by following the money.
Mike? I'm not sure he's,
But
oh yeah.
yeah, I'm still here.
So Mike, can you talk about how you were directing us with the performance bond? You didn't really want it to go too high. We raised it from 250 to 300, but you knew that the cost of a major tree could be like 350 for planting, but you didn't want it to get too high. Do you remember?
I'm just trying to keep it in with reality, and also the other respect is that the money that is forfeit needs to kind of be on a par with what it's going to cost us to purchase trees and plant them. So
So
right
should it
now,
be higher?
$250 isn't enough to purchase a 3-inch caliper tree, 12 feet in height, and have guys drop it in the ground. It's just, it's not, you're not
Right,
getting your
we
money's
raised
worth for
that to
that.
300, but is that
Right.
still too low?
I'm going to leave that up to council. That's going to be a discussion for you guys. You know, it's, again, it becomes the chicken or the egg here, whether we want to chase people off or you could make it 600 to Wendy's point is, then they're going to say, oh no, we got to get it back. But some of these numbers are going to be astronomical. At $250, I have people putting up $18,000 bonds. Or, I mean, I'm looking at
Well,
other
Mike,
people's
is that
money,
because they're
but-
taking so many trees down?
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Well, so that's why I wanted a minimum of required mitigation. Okay. So maybe if they're taking large numbers down, Julie, maybe what Wendy said is an escalating costs. Like under 10, these are the numbers. 10 and up, they start getting higher. And maybe that's another way that we start talking about how many trees are coming down. And
Well,
it's
you
not,
could separate it. You could separate it also from development versus home improvement.
We do have the 2 charts for that.
Wendy said, the person that has a house, it's an existing house, they're not building on it. They just want to, put a patio in or something like that. They don't, you know, they only have so much room and they're only taking down one tree. How are we going to guarantee 20%, you know, something like that?
Well, then the mitigation minimum wouldn't apply, but yes, I hear you.
I
And
did just want, oh, go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
And to point, Councilmember Dayton, that you made before, you were asking zoning questions, and I was letting everyone else chime in, but realistically, most of these clear-cut properties where they're just tearing the house down and then cutting every tree down, most of those don't go before zoning or planning because they're complying with the floor area ratio, the side yard,
Correct.
yard
Right.
setback. So they're doing it without going before any board. And when they would come before the Board of Adjustments, a part of our formula, there really is nothing in the land development book that covers trees. It's an ordinance, which really is out of the purview of the Board of Adjustments. We would look and see, because they would mark trees, and we would look and see, can you move this path so you don't have to remove the tree? But if they weren't going to move the tree, it wasn't a reason to deny a permit. It is a reason for the town to enforce the ordinance.
You know,
Have mitigation.
there's an entire another way of looking at it too, just to throw it out there, you know, Jeff, maybe think about this.
Mhm.
You know, that's potential, again, this is off the top of my head here, is we could potentially set up a situation where homeowners who are building a particular house that's going to cause a lot of trees to be torn down, perhaps there's an incentive system to plant more trees in return for, I don't know, increased variance or a larger footprint or something like that. But they can only get it if they actually plant more trees than the ordinance requires. So there's other way, and that's fraught with its own issues. But that's another way of potentially looking at this, is to provide some sort of incentive for homeowners to actually plant more trees rather than just punishing them.
Well,
Mayor,
also, the other point I wanted to make is when you have somebody who's, because the problem isn't the homeowner who's adding the patio. That's not really driving this discussion for the most part. It's someone who buys an old house,
Right.
tears it down and takes out every single tree on the property. And we all know that this goes on a lot and it's a problem. Quite honestly, I don't care what we make that bond ordinance, or the bonding, I mean, for the tree. They're turning around to make big bucks. So to them, whether it's 300 a tree or 500 a tree, they'll just tack it on to the cost of the house. So I don't think that that should really even be the issue. We should just be looking at, are we covering our costs? Are we making it a little inconvenient? But if you're selling a house for 1.4 million, what's 200 here or there to those? And I've had developers tell me, residential, saying, oh, no one wants a tree blocking the view of their house from the street, which is a made up thing, but that's what some of them are touting. So they're justifying this as this is what the buyers want. So those are my points.
yeah, so first of all, thank you, because you actually are making my point. One, I agree that a lot of these homes are not before zoning and planning, which is why our ordinance, and Julie and Vinu, I think pretty strongly, has to get strong at this table. And two, your second point is exactly why we should have a minimum requirement of mitigation and not just the monetary, because many of these developers, they're not interested. And these little tiny, even if it's 18,000, like Mr. Cassidy said, they could still absorb that into the cost of these houses, because they're going from a $500,000 house to a 1.8 on the same piece of property. It's kind of insane. And Mayor, to your point about the incentives, I like the idea of an incentive, but I will tell you, I am against increasing things like FAR, because we are still looking at storm area runoff. We are still getting flooding backyards down the hill. So we got to be very, very careful. And the idea of many of these trees are that they're huge, water absorption, they're natural, and the root systems help stabilize our Tenafly hills and valleys. So again, taking out these huge older trees are really a problem, as long as they're healthy. So I think, I don't know, Wendy, how you want to handle it, but clearly You got at least one, two, three of us, I think, on board to amend this ordinance. So
And
there's
Yeah.
four, and I don't know.
So, so Wendy, we've heard of, and in terms of the incentives, I'm not clear in terms of what the incentive should be. I've just approached it in terms of a concept, that's all. You know, Wendy, do you have enough information to put some suggestions together for discussion, not even in the format of an ordinance, really, for the next, that we can put together for the next
Actually,
meeting?
Mark, I think before Wendy answers, I think Wendy, do you have the access to what we wrote on, right? It's hyperlinked in the
Yes.
agenda. So doesn't it kind of save less, will save more time for you to write on the document, say like, specifically if we're talking about the mitigation chart or perhaps the bond price, if there are those things like Lauren was saying about, above a certain number of trees, maybe you could write directly on the document so we can all follow the next time, what we can add, rather than like separate documents and then, like, so it's right on that tree ordinance. Do you know what
I
I'm
can
saying?
certainly attempt that. But I would also like, if it's okay with the council, I know that there's a lot of confusion of what the ordinance actually says with the residents to understand when they can or cannot take down a tree and when mitigation is required. So I think there is a little bit more cleanup as long as we're looking at this ordinance in the language of what constitutes a tree that can come down without mitigation as well. If you don't mind, I'd like to mark that up.
well, I mean,
Oh,
if
totally,
I
Wendy.
may,
I totally agree.
if, hi, Mark, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not that I have a problem with Wendy, doing a complete rewrite of the code, but I mean, to the extent that we are restrained by budgets, I think we need to really look into billable hours and make sure that we're not spending too much time on things that we need to do this in the most efficient way possible rather than just spending lots and lots of time on this.
So if I could
I think
suggest,
Wendy is the
perhaps,
most efficient,
Sure.
by the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
if you all want to look at those portions as well, I would highly suggest that be done because there's been several times just in the short time that I've been appearing at your meetings that you've had some residents with questions and letters. So that may be something to look at, and I can certainly just look into alternatives of what perhaps is methods that other towns may be using that are more effective at getting trees planted versus just monies forfeited.
Okay.
I do want to point out that the council and the planning board recently did change the fence ordinance to take out trees and shrubs from the definition of fence. So certainly new construction could be also encouraged to now plant trees along the border as natural lines, now that you don't have to prune them back tremendously for height.
That's a
So
good
that's
point.
something.
Yeah.
And actually, just if I can zero people in when they do review this, Wendy was saying about the confusion of the residents. If you all want to look at the 26:7, that's where Councilman Menon and I, and actually Mike Cassidy, discussed that idea of the hardship appeals, those letters that we get almost every meeting, and how to simplify that. And you'll see that we want to remove the newspaper requirement because, I mean, right now the stuff's not being followed anyway. So we want it to be followed, but we also want it to be stuff that makes sense to follow,
So if I
letting the
may,
neighbors know.
if I just may jump in on that, the reason likely that was there is similar to when you have a variance application where you have to give notice to the property owners, some form of notice so that people that would like to comment are made aware. So I don't necessarily agree with that recommendation, but I haven't looked at it that closely yet to.
No, we're aware. We're saying to let the people who share, 200 feet within your property, but the newspaper posting line is quite antiquated, is what we
Well,
believe.
antiquated doesn't mean it's not that we can just throw it out, right? Because we want to throw it out. I think Wendy has to answer the question of whether that sort of notice is still required. If you're serving notice to property owners, do you in fact need to advertise it in a newspaper or in some medium?
That's generally still required because
Right.
it's a way of notice to the world. This way, decisions aren't then overturned for lack of notice.
Right, that would be the consequence of that, the
Okay,
unintended
while
consequence.
while this is being worked on, though, we do just obviously want people to realize, as you know, with Omar and Jimmy as well, that we do want people to follow the procedures that are in our tree code, you know, and because sometimes we get letters and it's, you know, people haven't followed the first step, second step. I see Councilman Menon's hand was up real quick.
Vanu, go ahead.
No, I agree, and you know, some of it is, you know, for example, the letters that we've received that have gotten placed on correspondence. You know, those should be addressed prior to it coming onto our agenda.
Okay, I have two comments on the comments that are here. On page 26, semicolon 15, item C at the top of the page about a major storm in the borough for a borough-wide cleanup, residents changing from 60 days to 15 days. 15 days isn't a realistic enough time, because when we have major storms and power lines come down, it could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks before PSE&G even shows up to move power lines, and the trees and the shrubs can't be cut up until PSE&G moves those lines. So,
So this was one of Mike's suggestion. Mike, when we
Mike,
discussed this, you want to talk
yeah,
about that?
I mean,
Yeah,
how
it's
could we realistically do that?
well, 2 months is way too long to have. People are, you know, we can't sustain picking stuff up
Right.
at that rate. We have other duties. So,
So-
you know, 2 weeks is ample time. If you have a tree in front of your house on top of a wire, we're going to be aware of it, and we'll cut you the ice. You know what I'm saying? It's
In other words,
Let's put that in the ordinance then. Then let's be
I mean,
explicit.
so that you're right. If we, because we have to be realistic, as you know, it could take weeks for PSE&G to cut down certain trees based on what's going on and their priorities. So I don't know whether we put it in the ordinance to make exceptions for, utilities that haven't been repaired yet, or just make it 30 days and call it a compromise and not overcomplicate it. Vanu, go ahead, please.
Unless we want to, you know, separate it out into, you know, a major storm versus a state of emergency type of thing, you know, where something has been declared.
I don't think residents are going to be able to navigate that. So maybe if you want to make a shortened period and then make an exception for utilities involved, or, you know, I think Wendy can craft some good language here.
There you go, Wendy. It's now your responsibility. And the last, which I agree with, the last comment I have is on the last page, 2616, where you've added site plans required for some particular things. I don't understand why we're adding site plan requirements and notification to adjacent property owners. In other words, to what end does that serve there, as opposed to just spending money for site plans?
Mike, do you want to address that?
Yeah.
This is the summary chart of tree regulations.
Certain aspects of this are, you know, there's no site plan required for an exterior home improvement construction. So you're putting an addition on your house. I need to know when I go there where those limits are going to be. If I don't have your site plans in my hand when I get there,
So,
you know, I need a map.
So,
need a
in other
map.
words, you're not talking about, because if you put a new garage on your house, you're required to do a site plan in order to get a zoning permit just to build. You're saying you, as DPW director, wants a copy of the site plan.
Correct.
Okay.
With
Okay.
with the submission for the permit.
With the right. So in other words, when the zoning inspector gets it, you want to see the site plan also.
Correct.
Okay.
It just makes it easy. It makes my job easier.
Okay, so that my question then to you is regarding notification to adjacent property owner. If someone's putting in a new house, swimming pool, or adding that garage, and they don't have to go to the planning board or zoning board of adjustment, how could they you know, if there is no notification going on to the property owners, then how do we handle that? And what's the point of it?
Hmm. And the construction is terminated.
So think that one through
Yeah,
a
I
little bit.
got to chew on that one more.
Okay, because we don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it, and if there's no process to actually get it done. So
have
think
one
about
more.
that when we'll talk about it. Pardon me?
I have one more question.
Sure, of course.
And Mike, this already happened to me, so this is in page 26:6. It's under standards for application review. And Julie, I like this language. It says if the tree is dead or possesses a safety hazard, and Julie added in as determined by an expert, but I would like to say as determined by an expert, like in the borough of Tenafly. I want to make sure that the expert is our expert.
So in page 2, we it was actually Jeff who pointed this out to me, that to define expert, maybe certified arborist. You're right. It needs a
Oh, no, that's,
definition.
yeah, no, that's fine. As long as it's defined somewhere else. I'm sorry, I didn't see a definition earlier. I didn't
It's
link
a
it right now,
question
so.
mark. I
So
don't know how to
I
define
think
it.
yeah, we should definitely define it, because this happened in my own backyard where various, lay people who work for a tree company are like, oh yeah, take it down. It's, and until Mr. Cassidy came to my backyard and said, yes, that's a safety hazard, I wasn't letting, a 100-year-old tree get removed. So to me, I don't just want anybody to declare everything a safety hazard because they want to build a porch.
Right.
Okay. So Wendy and Michael, I think you guys have heard a lot of the council's feelings about this. You know, the obvious overall goal here is to save as many trees as possible, with lots of details. So Wendy, perhaps you can come back to us in the format you think is appropriate for suggestions. And Michael, I think you and Jimmy probably need to give Wendy some guidance to help make the next conversation about this more detailed in terms of suggestions. Does that make sense for everyone?
Yes, sir.
No
Okay.
problem.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, everyone, on that. And for those of you who worked on that, thank you very much, Julie, Banu, and Lauren. Okay, next item: electric vehicle charging
I was
station.
gonna say, it was Julie Vanu who did all this work, but thank you.
Okay, Julie and Banu then. All right, electric vehicle charging station update.
Yes, I did just want to let everyone know that I met last week with ChargePoint, and the prices you're all going to be forwarded, because the gentleman got it to me rather late today. I'm not sure, Omar, I don't think you would have had the chance to forward the prices in a nutshell. But basically, just to let you know a few things, is that the way that they would do the charging stations would be like what they call the dual ports, so that because it like costs less for the maintenance. So you'd be looking at 2 spots side by side. We looked at a location at obviously municipal lot for one of these stations being for the electric vehicle fleet of our future municipal vehicles, as well as having possibly a shared situation where the public could use one of the units. Then there would be 2, like a side by side, 2 spots over on Washington Ave, and then 2 across from the Tenafly Diner. So those are the 3 areas similar to the ones that Volta had noticed, I guess, because where all the buried cable is. There's a couple of answers we need to supply ChargePoint with, but the prices more specifically should be coming to you. Like I say, they came pretty late. I did just want to let you know that the project is continuing, and I also just wanted to, because I keep learning more as I do it, just so you know, there's like a utility box that goes with these. I'm not sure if any of you have experienced pulling up to places that have charging stations in their downtown, but it's not just the thing that you pay and plug in. There's this other kind of box that has all the electricity and mumbo jumbo in it. So just when they are looking for the locations, they have to make sure that we have the space for those things on the, by the curbside. So I just wanted to show you that, or tell you that, and just let you know that that's proceeding. And hopefully by next meeting, we'll decide one way or the other which way we want to proceed. I know that Jimmy, you had joined me for the first part of that meeting. Just was there anything you want to tell the council at this point?
Yeah, the only other thing that that I would like to touch on at the highlight is I did see those. I did come in late today, came around 3:30, 4 o'clock, if that. That these prices are through a New Jersey co-op that we are a part of. So it would avoid us having to go out to bid. It would avoid us having to do bid specs and to dole out money to put those together and the time for that. So that's something to keep in consideration when you see this pricing. It is inclusive of that pricing through the co-op. So we would it would allow us to not go through the bidding process because of that. And we are meeting with an additional vendor. That is, I believe next week we're meeting with them. So we have council member O'Connor and I have we'll be meeting with them, get more information from them as well. But this is the exclusive contract co-op vendor. So.
Not to answer now, but it'd be great, all the great work that Susan's doing with the American Rescue Plan. I don't know if this, not to answer now, but to investigate if this would fit into that would be very interesting.
Good point. Okay, so Jimmy, you're going to have more summary information for us at the next council meeting on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Unless anyone has questions on electric vehicles, we're going to move on to the Safe Routes to School program. And thank you, Councilwoman O'Connor. Appreciate your update. Safe Routes to School?
Yeah, I could do that. I could take care of that, Mayor. We were notified through the state that there are a federal program, federal funds for Safe Routes to School grant application. This is through federal funds, and it is to facilitate a development and to do projects for safe routes to schools to make bicycling and walking to school safer for within 2 miles of a K-8 school. This is due mid-October, so I wanted to bring this to the attention of the council to see if I'm not sure previously if these grants were pursued by the borough, if there was any work in conjunction with the Board of Ed. Just the only one thing to note that because these are federal funds, the requirements are much more restrictive. So they require a lot more administrative work. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but I just wanted to make the council be aware in case there are any projects that might want to be pursued with us and or the school that fit into this grant opportunity.
Jimmy, I remember a few years ago, there was going to be a sidewalk replaced at Stillman School. I believe it was under the Safe Routes to School program, where the school decided, either the school or the borough, we decided to forego the grant because the engineering requirements would have cost the borough more money than the combination of the grant and the construction of the sidewalk, and we just built the sidewalk. Is that one of the possibilities here we have to watch out for?
Yeah, speaking with our engineer, they did recommend a certain price threshold to the benefit cost ratio, and the number that was thrown out was $500,000. You want to pursue a project at least worth $500,000, and to make it as you outlined. And this sidewalks can be covered on this. It says installation of sidewalks, so yes, it can be covered by this. I don't know about repairs. But the other thing to consider is that this grant only covers the construction costs, so it doesn't cover any of the other soft costs for professionals, engineer, architects, and so on.
So is this? Go ahead, Lauren.
No, Mayor, go ahead.
No, please.
Jimmy, is it a matching grant or is it just you receive the funds?
You receive the funds, not a matching grant.
So I know, at least around the Malm Elementary School and the middle school, there is a huge interest to get our kids safer to school. We don't have significant sidewalks to Malm School the way some of the others luckily do. And so as we've discussed and heard from some various community members, you know, I would absolutely like to explore this and let's find out if this is viable for us. I might suggest maybe Mayor take 2 council people and Jimmy and find out more information and what's realistic here.
Yeah, I think Councilwoman Dayton is correct, Jimmy. We need to do some serious homework on this because of the conversations around sidewalks. With this could play right now in our favor, the timing.
Absolutely. I was going to recommend how if we want to do it through joint use or set up a special meeting just for this to discuss with them. However you want to approach it.
We need to do this in conjunction with the Board of Ed. Is that how the program works?
You don't have to, but I would.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
All
We
right.
could choose. It could be one or the other.
So why don't you, if I could suggest communicating with the if you can communicate with the superintendent and get a conversation going and see if a joint use meeting makes sense on this.
Sure, no problem.
And while you're
Mayor-
at it, Jimmy, can you pull
Hold on,
up the,
Dan, then Lauren, please.
can you, or Omar probably, pull up the original Walnut Street grant we turned down?
I mean, my understanding of that last grant was that it was too confined to meet the, you know, to make it financially sound, to make that a better option. But here we have various streets that could use sidewalks in the Malm and middle school area. So maybe we look at a bigger area and try to make this more sense. Mayor, I would like to work on this. You know, I've been working on it and trying to work with the Altopan ordinance on their sidewalk improvement fund. And obviously I'm part of the Malm community that's very strongly looking for safer walking and biking.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, that's fine. Let's start with Jimmy's outreach to the Board of Ed to get the conversation going. And perhaps the 3 of us will work together to start investigating how the economics can work, and we'll work with the borough engineer on it. Okay. Notes. Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Jimmy. Next item on the agenda is the American Rescue Plan Act. Jimmy, why don't you tell us some good news here?
Yep, I'll sum it real quick, but I'm going to pass it to Susan. We did receive the first installment of the funds through the American Rescue Plan Act. We received it late last week. What they're doing, I'll let Susan get into the details. We got 50% this year, so it was around 750,000. And we'll receive the next one, I believe it's within 12 months. We do have specific guidelines on permitted uses of these funds. So I'll let Susan take it from there.
Go ahead, Susan. Susan, are you muted? All right. Did we lose Susan potentially?
I wonder which one she is.
I'm not sure.
While we wait for Susan, she's just going to be too modest, but her and her team did an amazing job.
Hello?
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Yes, Susan. Hi, how are you? You know what? Before you start,
Hi, everyone.
good, Susan. Before you start, I want to pick up on what Adam was starting to say there. We've learned that some communities didn't wind up getting any money out of this program because they didn't spend the energy either applying for or signing the documents that went back to whoever it is in Washington it had to go to make it happen. And Jimmy and Susan were all over this. And as a result of it, we had over $700,000 wired into our bank account last Friday, and we're going to get another 700,000 12 months from now. So thank you. I want to say thank you to both Jimmy and Susan for making this happen. And Susan, go ahead, take it away from there.
Okay, so I sent out a memo pertaining to this, and just so you know, we're considered a non-entitlement unit, which means that we have a population under 50,000. To add to what the mayor said, I believe we might have been one of the first, maybe the second or third, but one of the first towns to receive the funding. We actually got it in before the individual at the Division of Local Government Services went on vacation. Everybody else had the documentation in by last Friday, and we were already in receipt of the funds last Friday. So yes, we did work very hard to make sure we were going to get the funds and get them last week. With that being said, there's several ways. The local finance notice that came out, and it stipulates what the eligible uses are. They pertain to mainly revenue loss, water, sewer, broadband. There's premium paid for essential workers, public health expenditures, COVID-19 related negative economic expenditures, and it goes on. Ineligible uses would pertain to funds that have already been spent to offset a reduction in that tax revenue. You can't use it to pay down principal or interest on our bonds. You can't use it for our deposits through payroll into the pension fund or unfunded liabilities. Also, we are still waiting for FEMA to reimburse us our trust fund, which was allowed to be used, which we depleted because of the COVID expenditures. They don't want, the DDLGS was very specific in letting the CFOs know that do not do any duplication. So we would not try to get any funds that we have already sent to FEMA for, because there's a good chance we will be reimbursed for them. There is reporting requirements. The first report will be done September 30th, 2021. Well, from the date of the award to the 30th of September, it's due October 31, and then there will be an annual report for each subsequent year. Now, there are several uses for these funds. One is, and maybe there might need to be another conversation about this, is miscellaneous revenue not anticipated. So for the public, that is funds that are not in our current year budget as anticipated revenue. The DLGS also gave us guidance on the calculation to calculate our extent of the revenue loss. Our extent of revenue loss exceeded $1.1 million. So with that being said, if we wanted to, one of the ways we could utilize this money is take the $756,000 and put it into miscellaneous revenue not anticipated, because the loss exceeds the amount we got this year. Another option is to put it into, and this is where we're going to put it right now until we figure out how we're going to use it, into unappropriated reserves. So what are unappropriated reserves? It's amounts that have not been appropriated in the budget. How can you use those? We can use these funds and appropriate them into next year's budget as a grant with an offsetting matching expenditure. Other way to use it would be to do an ordinance and for a capital project. We can also utilize the funds for any capital that we may have done already, however, was not where we did not spend or encumber before March 3rd. It can be until December 31st, 2024. If we want to insert something into this year's budget to offset an expenditure, there's a resolution that needs to be done and approved by the Division of Local Government Services. And that's really about where we are now. I did look at some of the capital just before the meeting, and we have enough funds to offset capital. We have about probably $100,000 in our operating budget to offset, maybe $600,000 in the current year capital. But we may want to really consider bringing it into miscellaneous revenue not anticipated. And these are the options, and I'll be giving you more options and more details as further guidance comes out from the Division of Local Government Services on July 19th.
Questions from the council? Thank you, Susan. Questions from council members?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please, Adam. Councilman Michaels.
So again, Susan, please pass on. I know your whole team's not on the call, but if you could please pass on their just amazing, amazing work. It's tremendous. And I know the council knows this, but for those from the public on the call, $700,000 is, I would actually argue, is slightly more than an entire year's tax increase, right? We have about a $30 million budget. We go up 2 to 3%. That's about $600,000. So, and as the mayor said, there's another $700,000 coming. So this is literally, to Susan and her team's efforts, literally 2 years worth of tax increases equivalents. My recommendation, and would take Susan's lead here, but I don't know if we have a separate meeting or we prepare for the next meeting, but I would love for us to think about how do we most effectively utilize these funds. We talk as a council, identify, 3 to 5 opportunities, and then and take advantage of this funding as the government would like us to. Again, you guys heard me during the budget process. I feel like we're spending a little too much on the maintenance side and not enough on the lean in growth side. This has to be the absolute best place. This is almost found money to invest into our town. So I'd love the other council, let's have the meeting. I'd love to hear from my fellow council people on how we invest these funds appropriately to make our town better. But again, tremendous work by Susan and her team.
Thank you, Adam. Other council members who would like to speak?
Mayor?
Yes, please go ahead, Lauren.
Susan, obviously I'm going to reiterate Adam's thank you and to your whole team. Incredible that we received it already. I know towns are still even trying to figure out the fine, paper process here. So thank you for all the hard work. What I would like to see, if possible, is when you break down the miscellaneous revenue, what we actually spent on. Like, I actually would like to see, how much additional revenue did we go to, any building infrastructure like the broadband, or how much, COVID supplies, or, overtime, any of that kind of stuff. I'm curious to know that first, because obviously I want to make sure that all of those COVID expenses are covered, which is, the main purpose here. And then my second question is, the things that we invested in over this last year, like the HVAC or the fire truck, is that is that a supporting public health expenditure? And so I'd be curious to know, when those guidelines come out, what we can fit in. And then the other question I had is, can you do partial payments? Can we put, $200,000 towards a fire truck, or do we have to pay in whole, because that's a line item in the budget? But, I definitely would need more details here. I like Adam's idea of having a separate meeting on allocating these funds. I think it's so essential for us to plan for our future and to plan correctly here with Susan's guidance, that I would like to actually dedicate that time. So Adam, good idea.
Susan, thank you, Lauren. Susan, why don't you address Councilwoman Staten questions about, the debt and how we can't use it for that and things of that nature. Go ahead, so we just get that on the table.
Okay, so the first thing that Councilwoman Dayton spoke about was revenue, miscellaneous revenue. So just so everybody knows, if we take this into miscellaneous revenue not anticipated, that's outside of the budget, and that would actually go into our fund balance, which is also known as surplus. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that, okay? That's where that would end up. That's one option. Now, as far as, looking at our operating expenses, some of the things that we could use the funding for would be like stormwater expenses, I believe, for any type of COVID expenses. We have some money in there, COVID cleaning, anything like that. In the capital, we could use it, maybe I would think for the generator sewage pump. Now remember, these are just things I jotted down just before the meeting that I would need to investigate. Culvert and sewer inspections. These are big items, 250,000, 150,000. Anything related, HVAC is possibility. When you get done with just those 3 items alone, I would confirm with the DLGS that those qualify, those start to add up. So, maybe we want to use it, maybe we want to break up the 756,000, or maybe there's 3 uses here. One is capital, one is operating, and one is miscellaneous revenue not anticipated. So, contingent upon how the governing I'll give you all your options. Those are just some examples. And as the mayor said, you can't pay down debt, but these are all really good options for us. And, I think that, like Adam said, it really is a gift. I think that there's a lot of infrastructure needs of not just our borough, but many boroughs that can be done now or done in the future. And we don't have to use these funds. We could keep them unappropriated and use them later as well. We have until, it runs until, let's see, it must be obligated after March 3rd, 2021, but no later than December 31st, 2024. So to be eligible. So this is really giving us the time. And also we did do a special emergency last year where we put deferred charges into our budget that I think we had 250,000, we then canceled 50. That is an item, they came out with another local finance notice where I believe that it could also be put towards those emergencies. So there's really 4 options here. And that would be presented. I can make a list. I'll give you the list. Before I give you the list, I will confirm with Chief Bureau of Financial Regulations. I have a good relationship with her in Trenton, Christina Zapici. And I actually did speak with her last week about some of the questions because I knew we would be talking about it. She told me there's more guidance, but to make sure that these funds are funds that have not been committed before March 3rd. So in that light, our capital plan was not done until May 11th. So all of that, anything that is applicable in our capital plan could be, that I just named, could be eligible because we wouldn't have been able to encumber any funds until after like June. And then in our operating, we'd have to go through it because we did do temporary amendments to see when those items were committed, if committed. So I think we are in excellent shape.
Okay,
Mayor, can I
thank
ask
you.
a few questions?
Yes, Dan, go ahead, Dan. Then I think
So
Jeff.
Sue, I have a string of questions for you. So there's 4 options you listed. Operating, you'll give us the eligible funds or the eligible things we can spend on. Capital, out of the 5 mil or whatever we did, we can fund some of those projects. The third would sit on it for surplus of next year.
Right.
And 4 would be to cancel that 200 grand we borrowed from ourselves.
Well, we could spread that out from 22 to 26. It would be, I think it would be 40,000 a year.
Each.
That would be a deferred charge. They said they put out a local finance notice about that. So I'm going to confirm all the items before I give them to you. But this is based on what I've reviewed, these are the items. Yes.
Gotcha. Thanks, Susan.
Jeff, did you have your
You're
hand up?
welcome.
Yeah, so
Good.
Susan, awesome. I really, the town appreciates what you guys have done. So
Thank
you
you.
said that I like Adam and Lauren, Councilman Michaels, Councilwoman Dayton's ideas of having a discussion on this. My only question is, how much you said we're awaiting further guidance, and I don't want to sit here and have all these grandiose plans and spend hours having discussions only to have the state or the federal government say, you can't do that, we've rethought it. So how long do you think before we'll have sufficient guidance that you can give us guidance to hold a real discussion?
I think at the next meeting, even if I don't see the next guidance, we are in a position where all the funds can be utilized right away. So I could give you the guidance based on what we know today for your options. They're coming out with more further guidance, but I did a lot of investigative work already. I reviewed questions from other CFOs. I called the state. Basically, what I would want to do is go back to Tina or whoever else there that is heading this up. There is a gentleman that is heading this up. We had his name. We called him while he was on vacation, and to make sure we were getting the money. And he could basically, based on the list that I'll put together, before we even, before I even present it to you for your options, he could confirm yes, no, yes, 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 and that would be it. So I seriously doubt that there's going to be any wait time, even if their guidance isn't distributed to the CFOs, the administrators, or anyone else. There's enough to know what we could do. I also, the auditor's on vacation today. I touched base with them about the things I wrote in my memo, and they confirmed that it's accurate. So as far as waiting for guidance, they can be slow. In fact, they put out guidance and had the due date for the 30 days for submission for 6/25. That time started ticking in May, and no guidance was out. So I believe a lot of municipalities had to really scramble because there was nothing out until after the time clock started ticking. So I don't think you're gonna have to wait very long. I think at the next meeting we'll be able to determine, what the governing body wants to do.
Okay. Thank you. That was your question, Jeff, right? I'm just gonna say this, I think that 100% of this money we should really consider using for long-term benefit to the residents, whatever that might be, whether we build a new park, whether we have broadband, whatever we decide, whatever the council decides to use it on. I know Susan mentioned, the Richard Street, pumping station. Do we need a new generator for that? Well, if we buy a new generator tomorrow, we're going to need a new one in 20 years anyway. That's like that's like ongoing maintenance stuff. I really do think this is something that should benefit the taxpayers and the residents directly, that they can see, for their enjoyment. But that being said, Susan, you think that by the next council meeting, we'll have more information and bring some clarity to this? Or does the council want to have so does the council want to do that within the confines of a council meeting? Or do you really want to have a separate 2-hour discussion for this? What would council members like?
Within the confines of a council meeting.
Yeah, I would say at the next council meeting.
Okay.
I think this is so important. I still would like the idea and Adam's idea of the separate meeting. It's so important, and
I think there's plenty of time to, this is not something that needs to be rushed. We need to think it through, not rush it into a special meeting. I mean, I also think that when you have it in a regular meeting, more people have access to it, and the ability to watch what people are talking about and all of that. I think it's very important to have the public engaged.
Well, I think we should take this one step at a time, right? I think both Jeff and Vanu are right on this count, in terms of we don't have enough detail yet, and you know, Susan didn't bring the checkbook with this to this meeting. So I think perhaps at the next council meeting, Susan, if you could provide the council members and myself with a very clean executive one-page summary of the things we're allowed to use this for, that's in plain language so the public can understand it. And then we can have a general discussion and then have our secondary special meeting for the detail.
Will do.
Is that reasonable, Susan?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, wonderful. All right, if there's no other comments on that topic, good job, great job again, Jimmy and Susan with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the to be considered is the proposed ordinance for TVAC. I know Jimmy Justin Everon, I believe, is on the line. What's the story here?
Yep. So we have these changes that are provided by the captain of TVAC JP. They provide a red line version that JP and Justin have been working on to update this ordinance. A lot of things are outdated. It would also allow for, part of it would allow to include a medical director. So they brought it to my attention. I asked to provide to the mayor council a red line version to review. And I just want to see how to proceed to go forward with all the reviews, as it is pretty extensive updates and proposed changes.
Mayor,
So-
can I also do
Go
a
ahead,
little bit of
Councilwoman, go
flavor
ahead.
here?
Go ahead.
So just so everyone knows, Jimmy, JP, and I met to discuss the concept of either a medical advisor or medical director. Our ordinance actually, in the ordinances actually allowed for a medical advisor. JP took it upon himself to work with one of the people who are interested in the position, Dr. Andrew Chertoff, to determine which would make more sense for the TVAC. I was not part of that conversation. But my question for Justin and Jimmy here is, these are very interesting changes, but were they run by Wendy?
So I'm actually on the line as well. Sorry, I had to call in. JP,
Hey,
captain of the ambulance corps.
Hey, JP.
So basically, most of these ordinances haven't been updated since 1982, which was founded, and then again in 2006. So when we wanted to have our medical director, we wanted to add language in our ordinance for that, as well, and just to clarify like the role of it, just so that we would have, a working, thing to work off for his role, and then we'd have ways to move on with that. And then also the stipend part is also updated to more accurately reflect what our members are actually doing, and actually just simplify stipend a lot. I know there's been a lot of confusion in the past over stipend and the different line items, and essentially it just creates it into one instead of having an incentive and having a clothing stipend, and I think will make it a lot easier for TVAC and mayor and council to understand exactly what we're doing, how we're earning, what we're earning, and more accurately reflects the different roles and jobs that everyone does. And we also, have been working very closely with Lieutenant Greeley, who, is over at the police department and the fire department, to make it, better, not just updated, but also reflect the work we're doing, and possibly make it quarterly stipend, just so that our members are more incentivized to return from college, but still get compensated for their work when they're back.
And if you don't mind, to answer Council President's question, has not been brought to Wendy's attention. It's the first time it's being distributed for everyone. Just wanted to put it out there and just see how to proceed to review these changes and go from there.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest, and JP, thank you for putting this together. We appreciate your work on this for sure. I think to your question, Jimmy, we should probably have a police commission meeting to talk through this, because there's a lot more here than the medical director idea, which we generally all seem to agree on that concept for sure, which is great. But we've got, membership classes, the role of the police commission, how officers get shown. There's a lot of stuff here that needs to get discussed. So I think we should schedule a meeting of the police commission as a first pass and bring Wendy into that conversation also. to understand what all this means. And then we can report back to the council.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everyone?
It does, and I want to thank JP Pedetto and Justin for being on tonight and for all the hard work that they've done to try to bring our TVAC to the next generation and make the rules standardized. So thank you.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, JP. And Justin, if you're still there. Okay, you've got that, Jimmy, right?
Correct. Yep. No problem.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, next item on the agenda is the cannabis and drug-free downtown zoning analysis. Jimmy, why don't you talk about this a little bit?
Yep, sure. At the last meeting, it was suggested that essentially get the feedback from our planner with regards to help in decision making with the potential ordinance for the cannabis laws that's been enacted, and to help the council, realize the kind of the impacts in the drug-free zones. So that Burgess provided a proposal that would identify. It would be a map identifying the location of the schools and the drug-free school zones in relation to the borough's various districts: the B1 business district, B2 business district, commercial district, and industrial district. This is their fee. Their fee is $1,500 for this, not to exceed $1,500, and they would be able to complete this proposal, get everything completed within a week. So I just wanted to bring this. It was recommended and asked to come back to the council with this. So
Jimmy, can you talk a little bit? We saw a map, or I saw a map with some of the preliminary circles that, in terms of drug-free zones, pretty much cover our entire downtown. Is that an accurate, off-the-cuff statement?
I haven't seen it. I know Wendy had seen it, so not to put her on their spot, but you would be correct off of first glance, yes. And I think Wendy could speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, Mayor, the chief of police indicated that they do have it posted from prior days before the law was enacted, and under federal law, it's still a regulated area. So they do have it posted on the wall of the police station. We don't have a smaller scale of it, but having seen it, there's very little that is not overlapped by those 1,000-foot footprints, if not anything at all. So that was part of why I've suggested that a planner should be looking at this to see what options are actually available to the borough, assuming that we're staying out of that 1,000-foot radius of all the schools.
Folks, council members, can you weigh in here? Who would like?
So, yeah, I'd like to, Mark. So I remember the conversation from the last meeting, and we were concerned that any conversation with a planner would cost money. I remember that being like a specific thing that came up, and lo and behold, the conversation will cost money. It's a $1,500 conversation. So,
Dr. O'Connor, it's not the conversation; it's the production of the overlay mapping.
yeah, no, I understand that. But I'm looking at 51 respondents that we've gotten so far in our open in our time that we're soliciting comments, and 42 so of the 51 so far are saying they don't want it. I know that my concern was, why are we proceeding with anything that costs money if we're not going to be voting that way? It's a chicken or the egg, because I understood Councilman Park's point last time, which is, well, we'd have to plan for this if we actually did vote to allow it, but I didn't want it to cost any money. So I don't support this because it's a $1,500 cost for this plan. And that, I remember talking about this last time, and that's where I stand on the idea of a plan. I see Jeff's hands up though.
Jeff, please.
Yeah, so look, even if, let's assume for a minute we're going to create a zone, which would be, to Dr. O'Connor's point, against what we're hearing from a lot of residents. If we were to create a zone, by the time we go through the whole process, the planning board, the recommendations, the changes, we're past the August deadline for this. And a lot of other towns I've been talking to that have been focused on this issue, the same as we are, they're taking the attitude of let's, for the time being, say no, because as the fact sheet said, if you say no, you can always change your mind. And that gives us time to actually look at zones and do this logically and decide whether we want to spend the money, how we want to proceed. But right now we're up against a deadline, and we should really be focused on, can we even get anything done in that time? And if we don't do anything, then the choice is made for us for 5 years. We cannot change anything. We have to live with having cannabis legal for all purposes basically in town. If we do something, I doubt we'll get it done in time. So that's the situation we'd be in. So really, logically, we're at the point of, if you say no, we could turn around even in September or October if there's an outpouring of, look, we need these zones. That buys us the time to do this logically and have this discussion. But I don't think we should be having this discussion when we have the deadline right in front of us. And we need to decide that deadline. And I have recommended buying ourselves time by voting no for now, because we can change our mind at any time. So,
Jeff, if I could just echo just one thing, or just clarify for the public, it's not just the 5 year, as Jeff knows because he's on the committee. Any person, any store that would sell cannabis within your 5 years, let's say in 5 years we changed our mind and say now we don't want it for after 5 years, that store is already grandfathered in. So just want to be clear on the opting in, opting out. There is no way to say at that point, by the way, we don't want you in town anymore. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I'm a no vote for now for the same reasons as Jeff.
Comments from other council members?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, Dan and then Lauren, it sounds like.
No, Vino, you can go.
I know.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm also, I mean, I agree. You know, Jeff brought up a couple of compelling points, and I would tend to agree. I think that, and Councilwoman O'Connor as well. You know, we, rushing into this at this point is kind of the the wrong approach to take. I think, in this particular case. So I would also not be in favor of passing it at this point.
Dan?
Or the 1,500, spending
Right.
1,500
We're talking
for.
about the Burgess report right now.
Yeah, right. But I mean, for spending the 1,500.
Understood. Dan, go ahead, please.
So this 1,500 is already budgeted in probably one of our engineering/planning budget lines. And even if, let's say we voted no, which looks like it's going to happen in August or July rather, we should look into this anyway. What should we do with the downtown? What could grow? What options do we have for the growing of it, the transport of it? I mean, it's just good for downtown. We might as well study it.
Okay. The other comments?
Yes.
Laura, go ahead.
So, it's interesting because I think I'm still on the fence about where I'd wind up at the end, and I still am leaning towards saying yes to selling cannabis here. Again, especially medical. Again, there's lots of people who that helps in the medical and cancer society world. But my thing is, I don't even know if it's possible in Tenafly, which is why this report, I think, is important. What Burgess would answer for me is, do we have any zones that realistically could even be possible here? Or are we talking, at the edges of town near homes, or is that not even a zone? So to me, it's very hard for me to even make a decision. Obviously I wouldn't want this near, schools, near daycares, near places of worship. And so if our zoning is so tight here in Tenafly that there is no realistic option, I'd want to know that. And I don't, it's a shame they're charging us. I understand these are, map costs, but I think that this is important information. If they could turn this around in a week, that is well within our time to discuss this issue. I think the public should understand that if there even is a possibility we can have a dispensary here, where it would be. So for me, also, this is giving information to the public, and I would say yes to this Burgess proposal.
I have a question for Wendy. So if we have and correct me when I say something wrong, Wendy, but it's my understanding that nothing can be sold, grown, cultivated, that sort of thing, within 1,000 feet of a school or a church or a religious institution. Is that correct?
So under the federal law, that is still correct. Under the state law, it's a little bit iffy right now because these items are no longer under the definition under the state law for controlled substances, but they're still under the definition under the federal law. But as for proper planning and health and welfare, it's certainly within the council's discretion to cite it pursuant to the federal law, given the fact that it's, still the federal law.
So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the police department already has these 1,000-foot circles, right? Can we not just distribute that to the council?
The
And then
problem is, Mayor, that apparently it's a very large size map that's put up on their wall in the Detective Bureau. It's not anything that the chief was able to find a scaled down photo of or PDF of that can be circulated and reproduced. So I have the fuzzy picture of it, but once you try to look at it on the computer, you get an idea, if you know town, which school it is that the circles are coming out of and where you are just based on how the streets run, but you can't actually see the names of the streets or anything to that level.
Field trip to the police station. I love it. That sounds
I was
awesome.
just thinking
Council
that.
field trip to the police station.
Yeah, I'm just going to recommend, right? 1,500 is $1,500. That all 7 of us make it our business to do a quick trip to the police station to see what these circles look like, and if we've got a Venn diagram going on in town, and you can't sell it anywhere, well, that kind of helps make decisions for people. Does that make sense for the council? And if that map is not sufficient, then we'll go out and spend the 1,500 for if the council chooses to. Jeff, you have your hand up. Oh, I'm sorry, Lauren, then Jeff.
Really, this is a Wendy maybe. When was that map created? And, does it include the recent additions of daycares in the past 2 years? And does it talk about the center of town?
I don't have the answer as to when it was created, but it certainly does cover the center of town.
I'll have to take a field trip. Will they let me in? Better question.
I can't answer that.
All right.
Okay, so
Jimmy, can you arrange that?
We know someone who runs the police department. We'll figure out a way to get you in.
Got it.
Yes, Councilman Grossman.
Yeah, all I was going to do is reiterate the point I made before. Look, this is, before when we were talking about trees, the issue came up, is this a land use or just borough ordinance? This is land use. And really the proper procedure is going to be different looks from planning board and all that. Again, I talked to a couple of different towns that have been dealing with this, and it's not that we dragged our feet. It's just that the way the state did this and the timeframes they gave don't really allow for proper procedural looks at this in the time frame allotted for August. So here we're trying to rush it. Can we get this done by next meeting? The fact is, even if we did, this really should be going before the planning board for a look, because we're talking about zones and changing it and language. And it's not just, oh, so let's allow it where the circles aren't. I mean, you have to really define this carefully. I still don't see the problem in dealing with the short run. Do we say yes or no? And if we say yes, we're allowing it carte blanche, because we'll never get all this other stuff done. to say no. And then I have no problem with all these studies, but we're not going to get it done in a reasonable time that will be fair to this town and comply with all the proper procedures for really looking at this and getting it done by August. So we're going to have big holes in it. It's going to be sloppy. I'm not saying that I'm against this in the long run. I'm just against it to buy more time because we have an August deadline, and here we are days away from July, and we need 2 readings of an ordinance.
And the deadline
my
for
point.
public comment was June 23rd in the sense of the written public comments that we were receiving. That was June 23rd, specifically for what Councilman Grossman was talking about, to allow for the 2 readings of the ordinance in time. So I'm not in charge of the schedule, but I do know that that was the idea, right, Councilman Grossman? We get it on July,
We
an August
wanted
special meeting or something.
we really were pushing to get as much input from the public and from the community as we could to allow at least time to think about. But we're really against a deadline here. I know August sounds like it's at the end of summer, but 2 readings and drawing up this ordinance and going over the language, we're not going to get a reasonable land plan for where we're going to put this in the time that we have left. But we could if we buy ourselves time.
I have a
But
question.
a no vote is simply buying ourselves time to have a more reasoned discussion, not to sit here and take the axe and chop it.
So, Lauren, do you have a question?
I do. I have a question for Jeff. So Jeff, I know we put someone on the cannabis committee who was on the planning board. Is that right? Or we've been working with
Yeah.
them?
2
So
people.
are they not simultaneously looking at this? Because I thought that was what they were.
It's the whole board would still have to consider it, come up with, Burgess would have to make recommendations. You'd have to do some amendments to the land use.
I would think to furtherance of your question, Lauren, if the council approved the sale of cannabis in Tenafly, it would take the planning board 6 to 9 months. Jeff, jump in here. 6 to 9 months to come up with zoning that would be appropriately thought through and considered on this topic. There is no scenario under which they're coming up with anything by August.
4 months if we put a fire under them.
4 months with special meetings, but you're being very optimistic there.
So our
Nothing
decision is
nothing
made.
personal.
Our decision is made because there's red tape.
No, the short-term decision, let's separate out short-term and long-term.
Right.
The short-term is to buy ourselves time. Yes, that decision is almost being made not by red tape, just the state's timeline for this whole thing right from the inception was almost an impossibility for almost every town. I'm not going to say every town. Some towns had, from the prior iterations of this proposed law, had started to draft stuff. But for a town like Tenafly, this really, we need the time if we want to do it. If ultimately we want, if your vote is ultimately, yes, I want it sold here, then it's going to take time to come up with the zoning, have meetings at the planning board level, and then meetings at the council level, because all those things generated by the town, they're going to become much more important and involved as a community decision. So no, I don't think because of red tape, I just think I'm talking about buying time. That's
But
it.
also, let's not sell our work short in the sense of within that very limited time, we solicited a lot of feedback. I was quite impressed to get over 50 statements from people. And, we didn't see a groundswell of wanting it. So I do want to just say in defense of, within a short period of time, we also got a flavor of where the people were at. So that's important too.
I wasn't meaning our red tape, Julie, and I know you guys have worked very hard on that cannabis committee. That wasn't what I meant. So I just want to clarify.
No, I'm just saying about Jeff saying it. Jeff knows he's the one who pushed to get town feedback, and
Yeah.
we did that.
So
And I
we're
think
talking.
our work has been really good on this side. Sorry, Mayor. Go ahead.
That's okay. No, so we're talking about several different topics here. We're talking about the plan for Burgess and the circles downtown, and the planning board. You know, the planning board's not going to take any action until the city council until the council makes a decision. Obviously, if the vote is against it, they're not going to do anything. Then it's done. If it's for it, then they would move forward taking action. But I have a question for Wendy vis-a-vis Jeff's comments in terms of planning. If somehow, if the council were to decide to do this, and it takes 4 to 5 months subsequent to that for the planning board to kind of work out zoning details, does that mean in the absence of any prohibition or zoning requirement, someone would be able to open up a store anywhere? How does that work?
No, what you would need to do is still opt out while you're looking at this. You don't want to leave yourself in a situation where you do nothing and then potentially a license could be approved could be submitted for a business within town.
My question was, though, if the council decided to opt in without any zoning rules, what would happen? What could happen?
We would not opt in without zoning rules. What we could do is at least opt in with a certain number of licenses for different classes. Let's say you only want a distributor, and I forget which class that is. Maybe 5. I don't recall off the top of my head, or maybe it's 6 actually. So you would indicate on a zoning ordinance that basically amending your existing land use ordinance, maybe for, let's say, the industrial zone. So in the I zone, you would amend it to include an additional use of cannabis distributor. And then somewhere above that, obviously, you'd have the definition of what a cannabis distributor is, et cetera, et cetera. And also, just to make sure, you would pass an ordinance that your ordinance would also indicate that all other cannabis uses or businesses are prohibited, because you want to spell that out. You don't want to be silent on it. Or maybe you want to have 2 of one licenses, none of another, 1 of one, 1 of another, something to that effect. It really is just an amendment to your existing land use laws, and it could start at council and then go just to the planning board for master plan consistency.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like from what you're saying is that if the council decides it's opting out initially is the best way to handle the planning, if so, of any of this, regardless of how anyone feels about it long term.
What I'm saying, because obviously that's a policy decision, so I'm not going to weigh in on that. You guys get paid the big bucks to do that. But what I am saying is if the council decided they wanted to move forward, we can certainly get something together that would at least be reflective of the uses that you're looking to allow and prohibit the uses that you're not. Now, if you wanted to further delineate, freestanding building, or then maybe before anything gets approved, you could delineate it to only in a strip type of situation. Those types of zoning could still be amended later, but yes, then you run the risk that something could come in under the first draft of zoning, and then you can't really change the parameters of what that building must look like or how that building should be situated.
Understood. Okay, so what are the next, and I know we're going beyond the whole Burgess thing here. So we're all clear, at the next meeting, because we're coming up against a time deadline, we have to vote on an ordinance, correct? On first reading at the next meeting?
Assuming that we're keeping our already noticed annual meeting notice schedule for meetings, you're going into your summer schedule. You only have 1 meeting in July scheduled and 1 meeting in August. Both are before the August 21st deadline. So yes, if there's no special meetings being called, you need to introduce something, because I do not recommend doing nothing.
No, we're all in
Yes.
agreement with not doing nothing. We don't want to do nothing. We want to take action. Okay, so then is the next meeting where the council votes for an ordinance to say, yes, we're going to allow cannabis, or no, we're not going to allow cannabis? Either way, we need an ordinance, yes or no?
Correct.
And so the council can take the vote at the next meeting and and do the first reading, either yes or no.
So ideally, you would give me direction tonight so that I would know what ordinance is going to be on your agenda for the next meeting. Unless, again, if we're keeping with just the 2 meetings that are left before this is required.
Okay, council want to weigh in? Opinions?
I would
Can I build
propose
off?
that she does an ordinance for opting out.
Dan, what you saying?
Can I build off Jeff's comment and just a question for Jeff?
Of
Can
course.
we do all of this in parallel, Jeff? Where we
Sorry.
do these studies and we vote. Let's July we vote no to opt out. How do we do this in parallel?
You can certainly, if people want to do the Burgess and start the ball rolling, you can do that at the same time. Just one does not preclude the other. That's what the point I was trying to make.
That's an interesting point you made there, Dan. In other words, the council can move forward with a no, and at the same time go ahead and authorize the Burgess study, so that if the council chooses to change their mind at a future date, they have that information available to them. Jeff is right with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation: an opt-out ordinance for July, with this study moving in parallel.
Okay, other council members, how do you, so we've got Julie has weighed in, Dan has weighed in to give Wendy some guidance here. Adam?
I think I've weighed in a bit, but I
Jeff,
will.
we're kind of quasi-officially I'm asking everyone to weigh in so there's clarity.
Right. So I'm sorry, Councilman Michaels.
No, I like Dan's recommendation. We could.
Okay.
Can I ask Councilman Michaels, what does the downtown committee say?
It wasn't universal, but I think there was probably a bias towards allowing it from a business perspective, from a bringing in energy to the town, but it wasn't universal.
Jeff?
I am looking at a map, the drug-free school zones and some of the houses of worship, and I'm comparing it to a zoning map. I'm not going to hold myself out as an expert, but I will tell you there is virtually nowhere. Like we have one industrial zone, it's an MI zone at the northern part of Piermont, and that's within 1,000 feet of Morm School or the high school. It's covered by both. So we really have, I mean, people should look at these maps before we spend the money, see where, would we really be helping any of the downtown anyway? There isn't a single street in the heart of downtown that would be good unless we want to ignore federal guidelines on houses of worship, schools, all that. If you want to put one next to a school, no problem.
What is it? How many feet is it? What's the rule?
1,000.
1,000 feet.
Can I make a point about that map? That's
Go ahead,
the circle map with the school zones. The bottom right corner says prepared by the Tenafly Police Department. I can't make it out. I can't zoom in anymore. But I would rather have it from an official planner.
Like I'll say something silly, and again, it's a matter of, you know, if the council is just against it in general, then no information is going to say it. But just for fun, just because I like to spark discussion, if you did if you did the event, if you put like a dispensary, which again, just for the record, anybody that's been to any state that has the dispensaries that are legal, I guarantee you it's a whopping total of 0% of what you guys think it is. It looks as nice, if not nicer, than any place there is in Tenafly, New Jersey. But that's beside the point. But if you did it across the street from, and with the chief yelling at me right now, I bet, like across the street from the police station. So you know the strip mall that's literally across the street from the. Now I don't know what 1,000 feet is, and I know that the middle school is behind there, but you're literally across the street from the police station. I couldn't possibly imagine any issues when you literally have 100% of our cops 50 feet from the dispensary. But again, just as a council, I think we just have to be honest. If there's just no interest, even before we started this conversation, we should just say it. The beauty of everyone on the council is you got elected and you get a vote. But if you wanted to, what I hear from Dan is, and I don't think I heard Dan say he's for it or against it. I just heard he likes to learn. I'm a big fan of learning. And $1,500 is actually pretty cheap to learn stuff. But again, I just said it just for fun. Literally across the street from the police station, would you feel like that's not a safe place when you have, 40 cops across the street? Again, we just have to be honest with ourselves on, are we interested in even learning stuff, or is it a preemptive, yes or no without thinking through it, but just for fun?
I just say,
Go ahead.
I do want the Burgess report. I think it would be interesting because to me, I'm not looking so much all the way down Piermont, and I know what you're talking about. I think Jeff said that area. We have Englewood Hospital right at our border. And I think you guys forget there's a huge breast cancer center there. There's a huge cancer center there. And a medical dispensary for pot is just an additional medical assistance to so many of those patients. So for me, it's that side of town that I would be interested in on Dean and those areas, which aren't really commercial at this time, but aren't really zoned only. I'm not even sure how that would work. So I would want to hear Burgess. And again, where this goes may make my decision a yes or no. And I think that since I'm on the fence and I'm leaning a yes, if there's no possible good area for it, then maybe it would push me to a no and vice versa. So I don't think this is such a large amount of money for us to get information. So that's, again, my pitch to get the Burgess study now.
So I'm hearing here that the council, generally, not everyone, generally, Wendy, wants an ordinance that says no, but wants the Burgess report because they want to be more informed if they decide to change their mind after we bought time here. I think that's what we're hearing.
So,
Go
Mayor?
ahead, Benu, please. Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
I mean, I didn't respond yet.
Yes, I know. Go ahead.
So I would say that I'm a no on both. I think we should not do this. Put a no resolution next time. At the next meeting, and I don't think we need to investigate it further. I mean, we're hearing from the public where that this is not something that the public is interested in. So I mean, we keep.
Just make sure with the public, and it's awesome, and I agree with Julie. 50 people is great. 50 over 15,000. I don't know who wants to do the quick math. What is that? Like 30 basis points, so 0.3%. I don't. They could be right. They could be wrong. I just do want to be fair to the 14,950 other people that didn't respond necessarily to.
Well, you know how statistical sampling is, so we don't always have to go out to the entire population. But having said that, we got a good sample of 50 people who were aware and they were able to come out and voice their vote.
That wouldn't even be statistically significant. I studied statistics in college. That wouldn't even register, Venu. So
I don't want to step on what Ben is going to say, but I do just want to say in politics, there's a definite old adage about for every person who takes the time to actually write a message, they represent an enormous amount of people because the effort they put in. How many people is it, Venu?
It's something like 200 or, it's some huge.
It's a huge number for them to have taken the time to write. And I feel like a lot of the discussion is really ignoring a lot of all this public feedback. So, again, we're separating the issues. I think on the next meeting, we need to have the, resolution to vote on or the ordinance to vote on to make sure we're in time. But I am perplexed, I will admit, as to why we would study through a Burgess report, something that we're absolutely not getting the feedback that people want. I'm perplexed.
can I just actually use real numbers because
Go ahead,
We had
Lauren.
a referendum on the voting ballot, and overwhelmingly Tenafly passed it, overwhelmingly. So while maybe 50 people wrote in, lots of people voted and voted yes. Okay, so let's
Many
remember that
many
that
people
statistic
voted yes.
exists here.
They
And
didn't vote for
so
Yeah.
this question.
So let's.
I'm just saying, if we're
No,
going to use
Hold on a
data,
second.
let's use the
Time out,
data that
everybody.
actually,
That is truly an apple and an
voted,
orange.
they
Guys,
voted
hold
on
on,
something
time out.
completely different.
we don't
Time
know
out a
that.
second. Guys, this
Absolutely.
isn't, we're not going to have a whole statistical analysis argument here. That's a whole nother conversation. It sounds like for the next council meeting, the council is going to go with a no, Wendy, in terms of putting together an ordinance. The council also, everyone agreed, I think, to do a road trip to the police station. Let's take a look at these Venn diagrams. And then at the next meeting, because there's a lot of disagreement about this, at the next meeting, we can also decide yes or no, after the council's seen the diagrams, to spend the $1,500 on the Burgess report or not. And then those three topics sounds like where we are. Yes, Councilman Grossman. You're muted, Jeff. You're muted. You're muted, Jeff.
You'd think after a year and a quarter I would know that. I like the idea. Here's what I would just add. If somebody from Borough Hall could send us a copy of the zoning map so that people can see, like, it's one thing to
Yes.
look at the circles and what's open, but if it's in the middle of a residential neighborhood, that's going to change the entire view. So because Council President Dayton's point about the south end of Tenafly, there's one B2 zone at the very border of Englewood that's about 1 block by 1 block, and the rest is residential. So I think people need, if we can distribute that.
Jimmy, if you could, between yourself and Omar, please distribute that to all the council members. Okay, Wendy, do you have clarification on what you need for the next meeting?
Yeah, Mayor, I'm going to have an ordinance ready for an opt-out for introduction at the next meeting.
Okay, and that gives us enough time without special meetings?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I would still recommend sending it to the planning board for consistency review with the master plan, but given that the master plan doesn't contemplate the selling of cannabis, there shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, can I make a request on that?
Of course.
Since we're launching our wonderful new website, and we'll discuss that later, can you please make a notification on that this ordinance will, be discussed and introduced next time, so that way if anyone else in the public feels strongly one way or the other, they still have an opportunity to speak.
Oh, so right. You want me to now? You're asking I announce that to the community. Of course, yes, that makes sense.
On the website and in your message, please.
Yep. Okay, my message. Let me just write that. No, cannabis. Okay, I will do that. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is renaming the Tenafly swim club site. And we have one of our young residents online here. Kai, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
And with the council's okay, we just Kai's going to jump in here. Are you ready to? Do you want to talk about a little bit of your suggestion for renaming the swim club site?
Sure. Yeah, I haven't really prepared anything like I did last.
That's okay.
But...
I'm putting you right on the spot to get you right into it.
Okay. So I think you all were here last time when I was talking about how I'd researched Katie Stanton and I researched that she lived in Tenafly, and I wanted to rename the park at the old Tenafly Swim Club site in her honor. And I think that it's really important that we celebrate our local history.
Council members, comments on that? Thoughts? Something to be considered at a next meeting, maybe? Jeff, go ahead, please. You're muted, Jeff. Jeff, it's been 5 minutes.
Here's the
You
problem.
owe a quarter, Jeff. It's a quarter into the pot.
I'm muting because I have a little table fan here, and I mute it so that you don't hear the fan running. So I have to turn the fan off. Mr. Benjamin, I appreciated last time you were here. I think we had some correspondence about changing from Walnut to the swim club site. So obviously, I think this is a great idea. We do have a lot of famous people in town. I think that, as I said previously, just because we name the swim club site doesn't mean we can't name elements within it. So like if we have the dog park and we want to name that for former mayor, as there's been discussion, it's the former mayor's dog park at Elizabeth Cady Stanton Park. That's fine. And I think it's a great suggestion. And again, Mr. Benjamin, wish you were in my middle school, because I told my students about you and I said they got to be more assertive.
Comments from other council members?
Mayor.
Yes, please.
Thank you for joining us again, and love the background with Cafe Angelique. You know, as a woman and someone who, like I said, was going to celebrate an entire day dedicated to Elizabeth Cady Stanton and our suffragists, I very much appreciate this. I still think this is a little bit premature to choose that as a spot because we just don't know what's happening. But I will tell you that I would like you to be part of the HPC discussion on possibly getting the Elizabeth Cady Stanton statue. And I think that your voice is a really strong one to add to that conversation. And then maybe where we put the statue becomes the Elizabeth Cady Stanton Park. So it might just take a little bit of more time, only because the swim club and the parking lot and the existing pool club, they're all sort of in flux of what that area may or may not become. So I would hate for, you know, Elizabeth Cady Stanton Park just to be a construction site for a couple of years, or, you know, a grassy knoll. So, you know, I think we absolutely love this idea, and I speak for others. I hope you don't mind, everyone, but I think maybe it's too premature to pick the park.
Other council members?
Excuse me, sorry. Can I just mention something that I know that I'm not on a council or anything, but I just like to discuss my you mentioned the dog park and
All right, Gabriel, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because you want to talk about the Scout project.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to just finish this particular topic, and then I'm going to bring you right in to talk about that. Okay, is that all right?
I just wanted to say that if you were going to put in a statue, that I'd be willing to do something for that. So 100% I'd be down for that.
Okay, give us a second then. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry,
It's okay. It's all good. It's all good. We just try to do things in order because I get very confused very easily.
So Mayor Zinna, maybe there's
Yes.
so if the goal here though would be to name something nice for Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and I think that park would be a great idea, but Lauren's point is a good one. If that park construction is delayed, is there a way that perhaps we could name a location for her and something that was guaranteed to be completed much sooner rather than later, because I think she needs to be honored. So in this way, I love the idea. So is there something we can do with regards to this timing situation?
So I think Councilwoman Dayton's idea is a good one. Is let's discuss this within the HPC, because whether it's the dog park or Hyla Park, whatever it might be, if it's about Elizabeth Cady Stanton, it's a major historical conversation. Jeff, does that make sense for you? And let's invite Akai to an HPC meeting to discuss it further.
Sounds like a good plan. I'll update him when the next HPC meeting is, and we'll put on the agenda.
Okay. If you don't have Akai's contact information, I'll send that to you.
I have his email.
You do have it. Okay. All right, Akai, you've got that?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Mayor.
Councilman Grossman's going to be we'll be in touch with you, and there'll be further conversations about this. Okay. And thank you for your passion and being part of this discussion.
Thank you,
Appreciate your time.
Akai. Thank you so much.
Hey, Gabriel, we're going to, why don't you come back on, and you were going to tell us something about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Perhaps you want to attend the HPC meeting also? You there, Gabriel?
Yeah, sorry, I just stepped away for 1 second and
It's okay. It's okay. Did you hear what I said about, would you like to be part of that conversation with the HPC meeting if you have interest in this Elizabeth Cady Stanton statue?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay. Okay. I think that would be very helpful. And even if it's in a different location than what we talked about with the dog park, your input would be greatly appreciated. And so, if, with your permission, I'm going to give Councilman Grossman your email address so that he can reach out to you directly. Okay.
Okay.
Can I just say, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, I know Karen Noose and I, this is something, obviously Karen Noose and you and Lori, and all of the other HBC members were working on. So, maybe we make like a subcommittee on this in the HBC or something, the way we did with the 19th Amendment.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is the administrator's report. Jimmy, please.
Yep, thank you, Mayor.
Wait, I thought we were letting Gabriel talk about the.
He's going to join the conversation. Gabriel wants to talk, if I'm not mistaken, about the dog park and how it affects, how it's affected, and the scouts who want to do their Eagle Scout project there. If I'm correct, Gabriel, is that accurate?
Right on the dot.
Mayor, not to be a parent, but it's 10 p.m., so maybe we can let him go and then they could go to bed.
We could do that if the council wants. We could put it out of
It is
order.
way past their bedtime. I'm just going to be a mom here.
Council members all
I could
okay
stay
with
up
that?
all-
Gabriel, since Councilwoman Dayton thinks it's past your bedtime, we're going to let you talk right now. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm fine with that.
All right. Tell us, I know there's other scouts on the line here, and I had a conversation with the scouts who are going to put together a small proposal for the council and add some dollars to it, and then we'll distribute that written proposal amongst the council members to consider. But the scouts want to do an Eagle Scout project at the dog park, adding some benches, maybe a fountain, and some other things like that. And we'd like for the council to be a part of that conversation from just the inception of this idea. So Gabriel, why don't you give a summary for the council and more details to come. Go ahead. And you're on mute, so you have to unmute.
All right, thank you. Hello, I'm Gabriel Gutierrez. And me and two other scouts will be participating in 3 separate Eagle Scout projects at our local dog park. What we wanted to do was kind of refurbish it because I have a dog and my brother over here. Our dog's name is Willie, and instead of going to a faraway dog park, we kind of wanted to refurbish it and do what we can locally. So that's how we got into this. And Andrew, the other scout on the line, he kind of showed us into this project, and we were like, wow, this is great. So really, the dog park, we set to split it up into 3 separate parts. The entrance, the midsection area with like the giant absence of space, and then the 2 dog parks in the back. So just a general rundown of each section. In the front, we would be just cleaning up the area and adding a sign in the front. For my area in the middle, there will be maybe some benches that will be included, and just some refurbishing like in the basketball hoop right next to it, in that little dog park area, as well as power washing. And for the dog park area, there will be some stuff included, like some extra benches and some aerobic areas, as well as some metal cutouts of some dogs just to make it look a little bit more lively there. So that is what we have decided to do with our refurbishing of the area, because right now it's not looking in the greatest of spots. So we just wanted to work on that.
So Gabriel, before I open it, thank you for that discussion. Before I open it up to council questions, Are you, as we talked about, you're going to put a little summary in writing so the council, that could be distributed amongst the council members that they can see?
Summary in writing. I don't have one as of right now, but I know for a fact that
That-
I can get you.
Yeah,
Um,
that's okay. I wasn't expecting for you to have one tonight, just so the council understands that whatever in a couple of weeks, you'll have something very simple for them in writing that they can see and ask you a couple of detailed questions on at the other council meeting, okay?
okay.
It's very helpful. Council members have questions for Gabriel?
So my only concern, I'm sorry, did I get?
Go ahead. No,
My,
go ahead.
my only concern would be that whatever work they're doing, I know that that area is an area that we're looking with some open space funds. And I just didn't want them to put something in that if it was removed or, I guess I'm just questioning the timing with what the borough engineers report said or will say about, open space ideas for that area. That's just my question. It's a general question. I know that Gabriel didn't say he was doing too much major overhaul, but I did just want to know how that would work out.
So it's an excellent question. It's that's why we're asking Gabriel to put a little report in writing that the council can see and uh, and take a look at. Because if the scouts are doing things like movable benches and a temporary water fountain coming, with the spigot coming out of the wall, out of the existing building there, and maybe some decoration of fences is what they've been talking about. None of those particular projects are the sort of thing that's going to block anything the council wants to do. Um, and I think that's the answer to the question. They're not going to come in there with bulldozers and start building concrete walls, right?
No, I don't plan on building concrete walls. That's too much effort for me.
So I think what the council needs, Gabriel, is they need a little one-page summary in writing of the ideas that the three of you have, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
All right, that sounds good. I'll make sure
All
to
right.
jot that down.
Okay. And so then communicate with me when you have that in writing, and I will distribute it to the borough. I will provide that to the borough administrator, and I'll exchange emails between you and the borough administrator, and then he'll be able to distribute to the council members for discussion. Okay.
Yep,
All right.
that sounds
Thank
good.
you. Thank you for you and your team being here tonight. Okay. Now let's move on. Jimmy, administrator's report.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Micro paving. Asphalt paving systems began last week, late last week, Thursday and Friday. They're actually, as of today, they're pretty much done. Just a few minor touches left, but the roads listed are the ones that were microsurfaced. So outside of a few touching details, that was completed. That project has been completed. Fister's Pond.
Wait,
Yeah, go ahead,
I'm
Council
sorry,
President.
Jamie. There was a
Mhm.
request on Creston Avenue. Do you know if Creston was covered in the micro paving?
Uh,
Got
I
some letters
I
in
could
from some.
I could check to see if it's on the other list for mill and pave through the Riverside Co-op. But these are the ones that were covered for the microservicing. So I could double check and let you know.
Can I make a request if it's not on the list? Can you send the DPW over there with the pothole filler, please?
Oh, what was the road again? I'm sorry.
Creston Avenue.
Right.
Okay.
It's right
Thought
off.
it-
No problem. I can do that. I can have them look. Okay, no problem. Fister's Pond hydro raking. There was an on-site pre-construction meeting on July 16th. After meeting, the engineer meeting with, and all of us meeting with the contractor, construction is scheduled to take place in September. And the milling and paving Hudson Ave will follow immediately after the completion of that project. They're looking about 3 to 4 weeks for the construction, and the milling and paving of Hudson, they'll begin the utility work in line so they could go in there as quickly as possible before it gets too cold to complete this. the construction work for Fister's Pond actual hydro raking. That timeline should remain pretty firm, as not much should interfere with them performing their work in terms of weather, any other outstanding items. So we'll look forward to that in September. The capital budget as it relates to the Department of the Administration. Tomorrow, IT will be installing the data switch and rack as part of the upgrades and the capital project that was approved this year. So tomorrow begins that first part of that. They'll be doing that install and upgrade tomorrow evening. And then after that, they will do the Wi-Fi upgrades. So those wireless points will be upgraded, and the arrangements after that's all after the data switch is installed, I will contact David DiGregorio at the school to look at the cameras to install for hybrid meetings in the council chambers. We are anticipated to receive the plexiglass barriers for meetings tomorrow. That should be coming in tomorrow. We ordered 13 for various boards. Whoever wants to meet can use them to meet safely. And so I just wanted to provide that update, and I'll provide additional updates as the projects move along. So if there's any questions with that, I could be more than happy to address them. Then
I just want to say thank you for the hybrid meetings, because I will definitely need to be on video still. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I appreciate the patience. Just there's a lot going on, a lot of multiple projects within this bigger project. So moving as quickly as possible. Hoping sooner than later I can provide a good update and have that ready to go. But just want to make sure with the requirements that we are required to fulfill. There are administrative things that we have to handle at the meeting, hybrid meetings. We have to allow for public comments, both in person and hybrid. So there are a few things that we have to figure out. So we want to make sure we're going with it 100% prepared. Last but not least, open space action plan. At a previous meeting of the mayor and council, it was requested I present an action plan in response to discussion on open space projects and open space funds. I asked each council member to provide me with their top 3 priorities for projects at both the Roosevelt Common location and the pool property. Based on the responses, a majority of the projects and priorities focused on the pool property. I incorporated all the responses that I received from the various council members. Just kind of there was some overlap. So I provided all of that here as outlined and steps going forward. So I wanted to bring that to the mayor and council. The first steps, I believe, would be discussion at the mayor and council level, and then public engagement. I believe that there has to be interactive public engagement to elicit feedback on specific ideas and to be able to move forward on to decide some specific ideas on how to proceed. You should, I believe, host on-site public sessions, use the webpage and social media to promote submissions of ideas from residents, various boards and commissions, and various community organizations and groups, similar to what we did to solicit feedback from the cannabis discussion. So I believe that is the good first step. But I wanted to bring that to the attention as being kind of step 1A and 1B, so to say. And then further discussion on which levels to pursue at the mayor and council discussion, and then engage our borough engineer for feasibility, input costs, once we get to a very narrowed list. And then going from there, funding, looking at grant opportunities, looking at to retain the appropriate professionals. So that's kind of the broad, semi-broad action plan and immediate steps for I believe for these projects at these locations.
Amy? Hello?
I believe Mayor on mute.
Lauren, go ahead, Lauren.
So I like the idea of getting the public engaged, but it's so amorphous right now. It's so without definition that they're not they're not going to be able to contribute in a productive way unless there's some more defined concepts here. Again, I think hiring the professionals, I'm going to reiterate what I said during budget, hiring the professionals to give us some visuals and options are things we've done in the past. For other kinds of projects, we've seen some visuals. And I think having, even just artist's view of a sketch or, a more detailed discussion from the engineer about our limitations on the properties, that kind of information should be given to the public before they comment. And so I still would like to request to have a professional, whether it be Mazer or a different outside person, be it a landscape architect, a landscaper, or somebody, help us define what our options are. I think this is too generic, too amorphous. It just needs detail. If we want a pollinator garden, let them explain to us where that would be appropriate. If we want to remove a skate park, let them show the public what could be there. I just think, to say, hey, do you want to remove a skate park or not? The public really has no sense of what that means. And so it's very hard for us to get direction from our community without more details. Like it takes some planning on this end and some expense on this end, so we make the right decisions on the other end.
So, you raise an interesting point, and I'm not even clear that, an engineering firm is what we want here, as opposed to, park architects, whatever, that's an unprofessional statement I just made, but the equivalent of people who design parks, not people who do roads and sewers and bridges, right?
Those are landscape architects, yeah.
Landscape architects, whatever. What was the name of the gentleman who did Central Park? What was it? Lowe? Come on, Jeff, you must know. I forgot his name. What was it?
Olmsted.
That's it.
Yep, I was
yes. Yeah. So maybe what we need to do to get professionals is to ask for qualifications from professionals who would have some ideas for that, and then we can sift through them without, spending any money up front. Is something for the council to consider.
I mean, we have landscape architects within our community. We have architects and landscape architects on our downtown board. We have people who, when I needed something visuals for the Northern Valley Greenway, generously created visuals so that we can go and pitch that idea to the county and the state. These are wonderfully donated, and volunteer efforts that just might make the difference here as we try to explore what we can do. And of course, we have Mazer, who's our engineer, who can work with us, but I need to be allowed to task them with that.
Well, I think we should have a conversation with that we all go out a little bit and have conversations with people we know, but with landscape architects. I know several myself. Jimmy, why don't you reach out to Mazer to see if this is really something that they would even be interested in? Because we don't want to hire them to go out and hire a landscape architect.
I spoke to Andy today, Mayor.
Yeah, I'm listening.
With Andy, it's not that he would design where the trees would go, but he can tell us what percentage of the property can be used, what restrictions are on there. He can basically say, from the street to the edge of the pool, you can build a structure, and from here, after it's a pollinator garden and grass, that is what we need too, because
right. And most of that work is done. We know that we can only build on 18% of that property right now, which fundamentally is where the pool houses are, up by Grove Street.
We can build from the end of the pool all the way to the street, from the back end of the pool forward.
Okay, so that's inconsistent with, that's a whole separate, we can have a sidebar. That's very inconsistent with what the report he provided us, because that's about 50 to 60% of the property, and we can only build on 18% of it. But so Jimmy, the point of all this, which is an excellent conversation, is we're not really clear what we're allowed to do there. So why don't you have the conversation with Mazer to get a hold of that report that they've already prepared for us, because it does exist. And then let's start having conversations with local landscape architects that don't cost us any money and see what people suggest.
Mayor,
Go
just to
ahead.
clarify, the 18% report was what exists now on the property, the buildings and the pool for the impervious coverage. I literally had a conversation today with Mazer about an indoor basketball court that, he's like, of course you can build that over, the land kind of thing. So there's a task on that report, the original report that you're discussing, that is not the same task as what we would ask today.
Okay, so all I'm suggesting is, I'm not doubting your conversation at all. All I'm suggesting is we have some different understandings that we received from the same individuals. So all I'm asking Jimmy is to clarify that so that we understand what we're talking about. Because if we can build on half that property, well, that's good news.
And
Not that we want to.
I would like permission to work with Mazer and explore some of this. But again, we need the council to want to do that.
Right, so let's just take this in one step at a time. Let's find out what Mazer has to say from Jimmy, and then the next council meeting, we'll have the next conversation on this topic, once we have a little bit more information. Okay?
Mayor, just to clarify, there's a report that Mazer and Andy have prepared previously on the pool site property.
Oh, so let's distribute that to myself and all the council members.
But I'm saying that's what we're seeking, correct? There was a
Correct.
previous. Okay, no problem.
That's correct. That's correct.
So if I could just ask, and Jimmy and I spoke about this before, and would love the council's alignment. You guys tell me. I'd love to have Jimmy create a Gantt chart for us and understand the timelines for this. So I know in January, February, during the budget season, we said, we didn't want to invest, that maybe we'll use open space. Now it's, last month we said, let's come up with ideas. Now we're at, almost July 1st, and I don't expect 7 people actually responded back. So let's call 6 people. Each gave 3 ideas. That's 18, and we have 14 of them on the page. So clearly, from a council perspective, maybe we're not as aligned as we could be. But I'd love us to agree as a council on the timing. Is this something that, and I'm totally cool with this, let's talk about this for the next year or two and then look into things, or are we trying to say, we said that we wanted to invest in our open space. We said we wanted to use our funds. The focus was on these 2 areas, right? At the last meeting, lots of people had other ideas. We narrowed down to these 2. I'd love to get from Jimmy, is this something, I agree with all the public comment. Is this something that we want to decide on where we're playing by the end of the year? So it took a year for us to get to kind of where we want to play. If that's true, I'm making this all up. If December 31st, we want to know just where we want to play, that means we want to hold public sessions in August, and then we want to have a council meeting in July, and then, sorry, I just went backwards. That's not good. In September, and then October, we're going to narrow down to 5, and then in November, we're going to get, landscape art. I don't know what the steps are, but I feel personally that if we don't write down on a piece of paper the timeline that we want to set, we're going to keep spinning our wheels. And I don't know if that's the intention or not. I don't know if the team's comfortable with that, or no, we're going too fast, and let's not set arbitrary goalposts and just let it go organically. What does everyone think?
Okay. Look, it's perfectly reasonable to have deadlines, right? We're already on to step 2 with this thing. In other words, the first step was everyone making comments about what they thought the priority was, and looks like the priority decision is the old swim club. And the next step is to be clear, which we want to have by the next meeting in 2 weeks, to be clear what we're permitted to do there based on the land and water requirements and all that sort of engineering stuff. And then I think the third step is going to be engaging landscape architects like Frederick Law Olmsted just came to my head, Jeff. There you go. And engaging.
Do we hire him?
I think it would be fantastic to hire him. You'd need to have a seance, but one miracle at a time, please. All right, so I think we're looking at July for our second step. And to your point, I would agree with you. Let's have a goal of August,
So
talking
whatever
to,
we did.
yeah,
So why don't we just have Jimmy, if you're up for it, let's just lay out the
put
next.
it together.
There's 6 more months of the year. What can we accomplish if it's reasonable? Also, equally, you might look at it and come back to the council and say that's just not reasonable. We need 3 months for public sessions. We need 4 months for this, and we're looking at the first half of 2022 or the back half. I'm indifferent to what it is. I just want us. I feel like if we set timelines for ourselves, at least we'll drive towards it, right? Shoot for the moon. You might just hit the sky or whatever.
So Jimmy, put together a timeline, what you think in your judgment, something like this can be brought to fruition, and then the council has something to measure against or change and edit as they see fit.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who was it? Who had their hand up? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm hearing things. Okay. All right. Are you done with the administrator's report now, Jimmy?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is correspondence. Mr. Haney is requesting a film waiver. Does anyone have any questions or issues with this? Okay. Jeff,
Jeff
go ahead,
has.
Jeff. Jeff, please.
Do they pay a permit for this? I assume they do, a permit, and do we add to the permit fee if they're asking for an extension of 10 days?
Yeah, so the permit fee, they'll comply with the $100 per day permit fee. So they will submit a check of $1,000 to comply with the permit.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, counsel, on that one. So Jimmy, that sounds like it's all good. Any questions about the resolutions, counsel?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to talk about the unsighted liquor licenses again.
Sure, go ahead.
And I would like to make a request from Jimmy that the owners of the unsighted liquor licenses contact the council. I'm not even sure, Wendy, if I'm allowed to ask this, but I'd like to know what their intentions are with these liquor licenses. We have so few here in Tenafly. I believe we have 2 unsighted now, and I think that they should be in touch with our borough.
Wendy, you want to jump in, please?
So you can certainly ask, the liquor licenses run through the clerk's office, as you know, so you can have Jimmy or Omar reach out to them. When they're unsighted, Omar can correct me if I'm wrong, but he'll be holding on to their licenses. They don't actually get them. They pay to keep renewing the pocket license, but they don't actually get possession of the license without a site. So certainly there could be discussions and requests for updates to the borough as to what the intention is for when they will be cited or what the plan is to get them cited.
So just to piggyback off of what Wendy was discussing, actually tomorrow I'm going to give a call to the 2 unsighted liquor licenses here on the resolutions tonight, and I'm going to see what their intentions are going forward.
So is there any way to ask them to put that before, before the, the planning board or this council, or who's an appropriate person?
No, they proffer their proofs to the state to get the state approval, which gives you the ability to approve. The council wouldn't be able to approve the renewal of a pocket license without having received a dispensation from the state, and that was given to them, which is why it's on this agenda, even though you had the other liquor licenses on the last agenda. So they have to pay for those.
Sorry, I thought you were. We really have no say in turning this down. Like, I don't want to approve an unsighted liquor license again.
So that is certainly something that you can consider, but that would probably it would behoove us to have an attorney-client discussion as to what ramifications would be for that.
I'll stop asking questions.
Okay. Any other questions about the resolutions? None? Okay. All right. So why don't we adjourn to the regular public meeting?
Actually, I just had 2 things for the good of the order.
Oh, sorry. Good of the order.
Super quick. The first one is we had a good downtown committee meeting the other night, and we've been talking about having a movie night. I spoke to a number of council members before this, and just wanted to make sure. I mean, I think everything just goes through Jimmy and Omar, but make sure everyone's cool with a movie night. Obviously, we'll do this. I'd love to partner with Jeff on this to make sure it stays in tandem with the concert series. This would be Michelle Ross and team. Was going to do all the work to organize it. She knows the folks. There'd be no cost to for the movies or anything for the council. I spoke with Jeff, and I'd love to tie it in with the showmobiles already there, so we don't have to spend anything else. I think the only thing we have to provide is electricity. Other than that, he comes with all the cords and everything, and you know, if interested, happy, you know, I'll have the downtown committee do a first pass at the movies or whatever, and happy to bring that to the council just in case one of the, you know, Disney movies. Sorry, I forgot to mention, it's going to be, you know, focused on with kids as well as adults. So, you know, at least half the movies would be, you know, I don't know, Disney type movies. So I just wanted to see if there's any issues with the council on that, but I'll keep everybody informed.
Adam, I love that idea. So I say, I was hoping we had done this in the pandemic. You know, my family went to other places where we did drive-in movies, and we did that, you know, just for the mom. I believe all the elementary school graduations just had movie nights, and they were fantastic. So I hope to bring that. I hope you were successful bringing that here for our residents.
Cool. No, thank Michelle.
Just the only thing, we'll have a conversation offline, Councilman Michaels, but I'm just thinking when you mentioned Disney movies, concerts end about 8:30. By the time it gets set up, that's 9. To Council Member Dayton's point before about being a mother and kids off to bed, 9 is a late start for kid movies. Just to keep
So
it.
yeah, so like we spoke, so either we make, I'm making this all up, you know, we could talk offline. If it's the adult movies, 9 o'clock, well, my wife gives me a bedtime, so hopefully I could allow 9 o'clock. But if it is a kids, maybe we do it on the Wednesday in between the Tuesday and Thursday series and start it earlier for the kids. The movie guy recommended starting at 7:30 with, you know, everyone find their seat, and at 8 o'clock it starts, and you pick a shorter movie, like an hour 20, hour 30 movie for the kids. But that's great points, and that's why I'd love to partner with you on those. Cool. Any other questions on that? Okay. And then just the only other one, thanks. Andrew Till has been patient, and you don't hear that very often.
No.
But patient. We have our you know, the work that Andrew and Lindsay and others have been doing with Tenafly Cares. That I spoke to the council about the bike donations, and I just wanted him to just share so everyone's aware, and you'll start seeing it this week in social media. So Andrew, if you just have just, you know, 30
Sure.
seconds, if you could just share what's going on.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So
Hey, Andrew.
we are going to launch this bike donation program on social media. I've already kind of been doing a little word of mouth, and everyone seems to have bikes to donate and loaded up in their garage that they can't wait to get out of their garages or any other places they're storing. So I think we have a pretty good path to getting it out there and then picking up for people and then storing and repairing and then getting into a path of distribution. We spoke to Chief Chamberlain about the AAA. I guess it didn't happen last year with COVID, but the AAA program that the police department does with the kids and their bike helmets and learning to ride, or whatever that program evolves around. And so we're trying to see if there are any dates he comes up with, because we'd like to align one of the distribution dates around that program, that AAA Tenafly PD program or event. And so there's a few moving pieces, and then obviously excited for the September
Charity bike.
bike. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. And I think we've been extremely successful through social media with all the Tenafly Cares initiatives. But I think if anyone on the council has any other ideas on getting the message out there, I know we'll ask Mayor Zinna to put it in his address, and maybe we'll definitely want to work through the board of ed office to make sure especially for outreach for those that are in need of a bike or in need of bikes. I think we're expecting that a lot of donations will be in child sizes, but I'm sure we'll get our fair share of adult size bikes as well. And so we'll figure out how we're gonna do that outreach. But if anyone has any other ideas on outreach, please let Councilman Michaels or myself know, because we're looking to get the word out, and I think we're gonna collect a lot of bikes. So we're excited about it.
Thank you, Andrew. Much appreciated. Again, guys, the whole thing over the course of this summer, the goal is to collect bikes and make sure that if there are kids in Tenafly that need bikes, no kids, every kid should be able to have a bike, and we want to be able to redistribute those bikes to those in need. And then the charity that we're working with is at the end, if we still have bikes left over, they take them and give them out to those in need as well. So thank you, Andrew, for that.
Thanks.
That's
Thank
all
you,
I got.
Andrew. Andrew, you and I can have an offline conversation of crafting a message that I'll include in my mayor's
Yeah.
messages.
Yep,
Thank you.
Adam and Lindsay and I are gonna work on something, and then we'll send it over to you, and
Thank
you'll
you.
see how you can input it. All right.
Thanks, Andrew.
Excuse me, Mayor, real quick. You skipped over any questions for the minutes to be approved.
Oh, thank you for the reminder. Any questions about the minutes from council members? Okay. Does anyone have anything else for the good of the order? Okay. Could I get a motion to close the work session and adjourn to the regular meeting, please?
So moved.
Could I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We're in the regular meeting now. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, the notice requirements have been satisfied. The meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center, and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, you travel with your flag, right? Because I know you always have a flag in your.
I'm going to tell
I'm
you,
just saying.
I did the Pledge of Allegiance. I am looking at the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln in San Diego Harbor, and there is a flag flying, and that's as good as it gets. So yes.
This one up. So,
There
and I had that one going.
So there you go. Okay, could I have a roll call, please, Omar?
Councilmember Dayton? Here. Councilmember Grossman?
Here.
Councilmember Menon?
Here.
Councilmember Michaels?
Present.
Councilmember Dr. O'Connor?
Here.
Councilmember Park?
Here.
Mayor Zinna?
Here. Could I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of June 17th, 2021?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, Mayor. There's two minutes there. There's the June 15th, 2021 regular meeting minutes and the June 17th, 2021 special closed session minutes.
You're right. I'm looking at my old previous agenda. So I stand corrected. Could I have a motion to approve the June 15th minutes and the June 17th minutes, both of 2021?
So moved.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Roll call. Thank you, Dan. Roll call, Omar?
Please vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Revisions to the agenda, Wendy?
Not Technically, but I do believe we're going to need a motion to extend curfew tonight. So I will advise as we get closer to it.
Yes, we're getting
I
close.
don't know
Okay.
about that.
All right. Public comments. Audience members wishing to speak have a 3-minute time limit, please, to address the governing body. Large groups are asked to have a spokesperson represent them. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak this evening? Christine
I have
Hebron. Let me
Christine
guess, 39 Leroy Street.
How did you know?
I just
Three
took a
quick
wild guess.
things,
Go ahead.
because I know you have a deadline. Tree pickup. Could you please consider doing, am I unmuted?
No,
We
we're
hear you.
listening.
Okay, thank you. Tree pickup. Could you consider doing it 1 week after a storm to 3 weeks after a storm? If I pick up logs in my backyard, it is very soggy after these big rainstorms. And I can put them in a little pile in the backyard and move them out a week later. Just something to accommodate DPW and the residents. And don't forget that Christmas trees should be picked up after the holiday, which ends the 12 days of Christmas end January 6th, if that's part of this ordinance. For the cannabis legislation that you're stopping, could you put a sunset on that to just keep that on the front burner? There's a lot of tax money at stake. I really do think that when the residents voted to have cannabis, they were sure that there would be a dispensary in town. And my question on your 1,000-foot circles, what is the guideline for liquor stores? Because it seemed to me 1,000 feet was very long and I wasn't clear on where that was coming from. So that was just a question. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Wendy, do you just want to answer that one question about the liquor store, 1,000 feet?
Sure. So I actually just looked into it because I was pretty curious myself, and it appears that for liquor stores, it's 200 feet from entrance to entrance. It's not a radius.
From entrance to entrance of each liquor store
The liquor store to a school.
to a school. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
So are we locked into the 1,000 feet? Or was that just kind of pulled out of the air?
Well, that gets into federal regulations regarding the
Right.
sale of cannabis. Isn't that correct, Wendy?
Possession of cannabis, actually.
Possession of cannabis.
So that's not
Yeah.
relevant to where we would cite our dispensary.
So
Well,
it is though, because on a state level, most municipalities are being guided to keep in mind that it's still not legal on a federal level. So you could theoretically be citing a business to where they could get raided by the FBI by being cited too close.
Could people get
So-
put in jail also for walking within 1,000 feet of so cannabis is legal, you could walk down Washington, right? Do you
So
go to
you
jail
can
if
have
you're
a certain amount on you under the New Jersey regulations now, which would not be considered to be at a level to be distributing, which obviously such penalties would be increased by a school. But again, there's still a little bit of gray areas between states versus federal, just
Yeah.
like you're not going to have any federal banking institutions that are going to be able to work with cannabis retailers.
Yep.
It's still a
Okay,
sticky
just-
situation.
You might want to consider looking, if you're going to spend money on an engineering study, also ask him to plan out the alcohol rules, would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. Any members, any further or additional members of the public would like to speak that are online right now? Okay. If you're there, just speak up. Don't wait to be called on because you can't always be seen. Okay. If there's no members of the public, we're going to close the public comments section, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
I have to I have to recuse myself from the letter Q, the youth center refunds. So just
Okay.
okay.
No
So-
jackals, huh? No soccer tournament.
No
So-
jackals.
Wendy, do we have to pull that out, or when Councilwoman O'Connor votes, she just clarifies what she just said?
It's easier if it's pulled out.
Okay, so let's pull it out, vote on it separately. Any more questions on the consent agenda? Okay, all right. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve consent agenda items R21 254 through R21 269 and R21 271 through R21 276.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Or you have to call the roll,
Roll
correct?
call.
Call the roll.
Just call the roll, please.
Councilmember Dan,
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman,
Yes.
Councilmember Menon,
Yes.
Councilmember Michaels,
Yes.
Councilmember Dr. O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilmember Park.
Yes.
Can I just wait, Mayor, before you go, I meant to say, in this consent agenda, just so the public knows, we have hired a new human resources director. Mayor, I wasn't sure if you wanted to make any remarks about that, but I can say thank you to my council and the committee who did all the interviewing. I'm very excited to have that position filled again.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to get a motion on R21-270, please.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second. Second.
Okay, roll call, please, Omar.
Councilmember Dayton,
Yes.
Councilmember Grossman,
Yes.
Councilmember Menon,
Yes.
Councilmember Michaels,
Yes.
Councilmember Park.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In the interest of time, because it is 10:41 and we still have a closed session, if the council is okay with it, I'm going to skip the committee reports this evening and the mayor's remarks. I know that's going to disappoint everyone, but if everyone's okay with that, I would recommend us going into closed session because we might be a while.
Can I just one quick item?
Of course.
So just so the council knows, the Tenafly presents, first of all, the concerts begin next week. July 6th is the first concert, but we're also now very seriously discussing, and I want to make sure the council's aware, a music fall festival September 18th. It's a Saturday with bands, followed by, that will be our 4th of July fireworks. Will be all part of a big event. And it's as big as we want to make it. And the more of you that want to chip in and help, I mean, we could even look into food trucks at the swim club parking lot. But I really will need some help from all different aspects. I don't think this is one that the committee alone, because there will be too many different parts to this. And I know that there are some residents who have reached out to me, and I've played phone tag, but anybody you know who wants to get involved, send it my way.
Yeah, put me to work. Thanks again for driving this, Jeff.
Yeah, this is fabulous, Jeff. Thank you.
Should be fun.
Yes, I think so.
Also, Mayor, do you want to mention about this Friday's press conference and the following event real quickly?
Right, so we're, and the council members and I have, we've talked about this in terms of the folks from the Wiesenthal Center are going to come to Tenafly to basically do a program where they have a Holocaust survivor speaking with any members of the public, some residents who would like to come to talk about the Holocaust, the meaning. And this Friday, we'll do a little press conference just announcing that. And I'll include that in my mayor's message so members of the public who want to attend will be able to. And special thanks to Jeff, who did the lion's share of organizing and communicating with the Wiesenthal Center on this topic.
Do you have a date for that person coming?
Jeff, I don't know. Did we pick a date yet?
We're down to 2 dates. So it's, hold on, I'm pulling up my calendar. Either Monday the 12th or Wednesday the 14th. It'll be 7:30, so that people who work and who
Of
are
July?
at their office. Yes, of July. So
12th or
people
14th?
go to an office can get in, but it's really contingent upon they're bringing in a survivor, and it's really focused around their schedule as much as anything.
Mayor?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
I strongly would recommend holding off on this until the school board comes down and finally makes some decisions, because I think you're going to inflame a community again that doesn't understand what happened. And so in the interest of caution, while I agree that, this would be a good thing for our community, I disagree that it should be right now. We were talking fall.
So a couple of things that the Board of Ed we've talked with the Board of Ed about doing this. And it is, to the extent anything is possible, any communication is de-linked from the
Not
situation.
possible. It's not possible. I'm still telling you right now, there is harassment going on. I am telling you right now, this family's a target, and this is a large mistake to bring to our community until this other stuff cools off.
Well, let's discuss it. Let's discuss it more offline tomorrow morning. Okay? Lauren?
Sorry, I was on mute. I said, okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to skip Mayor's remarks tonight and ask for a motion to go into closed session after Wendy reads the closed session comments.
Resolution R21-277, at a regular meeting of the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Tenafly, County Bergen, State of New Jersey, held on June 29th, 2021. Be it resolved in compliance with NJSA 10:4-12, the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Tenafly are going into closed executive session to discuss the following matters: a collective bargaining contract negotiation update, personnel, administrative assistant for the fire department, and attorney-client privilege affordable housing update. Minutes will be taken of the meeting and released to the public at the time when the matter is resolved.
Can I have a motion to go into close, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Did everyone else say yes to? Okay, we'll see you at the closed session in a few seconds. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Wendy, your husband was very helpful in helping me find my seat at the middle school graduation. I can't believe I'm not still looking for it. That was the most insane. It was like a
All right.
snake of the
Could
alphabet.
I have
couldn't
a
find it.
motion to close the public meeting, please?
I
Motion.
don't think we have enough people.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, because okay.
The mayor.
All right.
We got Jeff and Banu, and yeah, okay. Motion to close.
So moved.
All, second,
Second.
all in favor?
Maybe. Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Have a great
Good
night,
night.
everyone.
Good
Thank
night,
you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Second.
You can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoes. You can knock 'em down, step in my face,